was on a Monday, and we got married that.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. Hello.
Can't hear you, Steve.
Good evening. Hello. Welcome everybody to the October 9th, 2025 Louisville Planning Commission meeting with a roll call for attendance, please. I don't know if you've been, yes, Dr. Excellent.
Chair Brown Eyes,
Here.
Vice Chair Basket,
Here.
Commissioner Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Hunt,
Here.
Commissioner Moline.
Here.
Thank you. With that then, I'd motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have no minutes at this time. We wanted to check to see if there's anybody who's here this evening that would like to speak to something that's not on this evening's agenda, something that's unrelated to the two items that are on this evening's agenda. We would welcome that comment at this time. Can somebody double check for me online? I'm not.
Yep.
No,
Nothing.
okay. Seeing none. Thank you all. Maybe this will help a little bit better. Thank you. All right then. I will now open the public hearing on a request for a recommendation to City Council for rezoning subdivision and planned unit development. The purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application materials and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before the Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation and testimony by city staff, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we will have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. After these two presentations, members of the public who have joined this meeting in person, by computer, or telephone may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak in person is asked to complete a speaker card. For those of you who are here, the cards are available on the table outside of the door there. And use the raise hand function if you're participating by computer, or *9 if calling in by telephone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. 2 people present at the meeting may pool their minutes to allow one person, thank you. One person at the meeting may pool their minutes. 2 people at the meeting may pool their minutes to allow one person to speak for up to a total of 6 minutes. The purpose of public comment is to receive public testimony, not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing, and no further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the Commission decides to reopen the hearing. The Planning Commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, table, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for the public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your full name and address, or actually whether you're a resident of Louisville or not. Does anyone participating in the hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing none. Do we have notification?
Public notice has been made.
Thank you. Do Planning Commission members have any disclosures?
No.
Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, good evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Matt Post, the Senior Planner in Community Development. The item before you this evening is Coal Creek Village. Resolution 15, recommending approval of a preliminary PUD, preliminary plat, a rezone, a zoning map amendment, and a special review use, and then also recommending approval of an ordinance to rezone portions of the subject property, and including that land use amendment from CCMU and RM to MU are. So we'll start with a quick recap of this application. I guess this hearing would technically be a continuation, if you all recall from last year. The planning
Not a continuation.
just tabled, just a new hearing.
Yeah.
Fantastic, great. The Planning Commission heard this hearing on September 12th, this original application on September 12th of last year, and continued that application at that time to October 10th of 2024. During that October 10th hearing, the Planning Commission requested a revised traffic impact study, and the commission directed staff to meet with the applicant subsequent to that October 10th hearing, where the application was continued again to establish a new scope for a revised traffic impact study that was based on the testimony and concern that was raised during those two hearings, both in September and October of last year. At that October 10th hearing, just so everyone's aware, the Planning Commission did continue to December 12th, and I'm sorry, you're right, tabled indefinitely at the September 12th hearing, which means this is a new public hearing, so thank you for correcting me, Chair. That revised study that was originally supposed to be presented at the December 12th hearing was not prepared in time, so again, that's why the application was tabled indefinitely, and we're having a new public hearing this evening. And so I'll start just at the top here with the revised study. So part of the recommendation and request that came from the Planning Commission was for staff and the applicant to meet and discuss a new scope for the traffic study. And again, that new scope came directly out of the conversation that occurred during those first two hearings. The scope that was agreed upon by staff and the applicant included a new analysis, or an analysis rather, of traffic impacts with and without the proposed Front Street connection, the incorporation of traffic projections from the proposed Delo Boom development, which is just south of this particular property and is still currently under staff review, also located in the Highway 42 revitalization area. Inclusion of 6 additional intersections in the study area. Those 6 additional intersections sections include Main Street and South Boulder Road, Main Street and Griffith Street, Front Street and Griffith Street, Cannon Street and Griffith Street, Highway 42 and Griffith Street, and Highway 42 and Harper Street. Included an evaluation of the Cannon Circle South Boulder Road intersection as a potential 3-quarter movement configuration. This configuration would restrict westbound movements from Cannon Circle in the future. The scope also included an updated directional distribution assumption. That would be directly related to the number of vehicle trips that are coming out of individual access points at the site. That would be the distribution, or the percentage of distribution of vehicle trips that are leaving access points, leaving and entering access points in those peak hours, those peak AM hours and those peak PM hours. The last element that we discussed in the new scope was the application of a 1,000 vehicle per day threshold for local street capacity, which applied only to the Front Street connection based on what is commonly referred to as a neighborhood livability consideration rather than a maximum roadway capacity. That 1,000 vehicle per day threshold is generally the most conservative count for what's considered a residential local classification for a street. I'll state this here since it's in the staff packet and the staff report, but the results of the revised impact study indicate that the Front Street connection is necessary as part of this development to maintain appropriate vehicular circulation and safe vehicular operations in and around the site and on the adjacent roadway network, and it satisfies the intent of the mixed-use district and several adopted policies within the city. Just continuing on with that a bit here, due to heavy through volumes on South Boulder Road and then restricted turning movements onto South Boulder Road, without the Front Street connection, eastbound U-turns are projected to increase by 40 to 85% in the long term with projected project development, which would require weaving movements across multiple lanes of South Boulder Road within limited distance of the intersection, which present unacceptable safety risks on that particular roadway. The study includes information on daily trips. So this particular study shows that 1,839 daily vehicle trips would be generated from this particular project through the 4 access points that are proposed, with 220 AM peak hour trips. That would be between the hours of 7 AM and 9 AM, and 244 PM peak hour trips, and that would be 4 PM to 6 PM. And those numbers account for all 4 access points around that particular site in those peak hours. Moving into the summary of the proposal, I think as most folks know, most folks know this application a bit, so I'll try to go through this a little bit faster than I normally would for the sake of the folks here tonight to make public comment, and then we'll focus on the revised traffic impact study at the end of this particular application, which I think was the general request from Commission on the last hearing. So the application has not changed significantly from the last time you all saw this. The primary changes have come from the recommendations out of the traffic impact study, which include proactive traffic calming measures on Front Street, and then a novel approach to the Front Street Harper Street connection, which we'll discuss here in later slides. But again, the PUD, just so that everyone is aware, is again a request for this application is a request for the approval of that PUD and plat for 188 dwelling units and 13,534 square feet of commercial space on a currently vacant 10.7 acre site. This site is roughly at the southwest corner of South Boulder Road and Highway 42. There is an existing commercial pad with Union Jack Liquor, Snarf's sandwiches right there. And of course, you can see on the site here, the vacant area encompasses this. And then Little Italy is to the south, and then South Boulder Road, east to west on the north side, then Highway 42 north to south on the east side. And again, as you know, the application includes the rezone request from CCMU and RM to MUR. And then, of course, that special review use to allow multifamily on the ground floor of a multifamily dwelling in the mixed-use zone district. A little bit of background here. The property is located in the Highway 42 revitalization area and the Highway 42 urban renewal area. That designation places the property within the mixed-use overlay and also within the mandatory rezone area. I think the Commission is aware, and the folks behind me may be as well, but any redevelopment of this particular site is required to rezone to the MUR or CCMU zone district. That occurred on this property in 2013 with a prior application. After 2013, that mandatory rezone, a PUD was approved in 2016, which allowed 51 dwelling units and 30,000 square feet of commercial. That was a PUD and a plat. That PUD and plat were never executed, and so approvals or the ability to issue permits on that PUD and plat expired in May of 2019. Some additional background here on the Highway 42 revitalization area. The purpose of that area was to encourage development to support an eventual rail station for transit here in Louisville. I think, as we all know, funding challenges have plagued the implementation of the B line, which was the light rail system that was slated to come through Denver to Boulder and stop here in Louisville. But real progress has been made on a passenger rail service that would link the entire Front Range from Pueblo to Fort Collins, with a potential stop here in Louisville. Feasibility study was completed in 2024 with participation from the city of Louisville and other Northwest jurisdictions. And then following that study, an implementation plan was submitted to the state and funding sources were made available. So I just want to make folks aware that would be the Front Range passenger rail, which would be a passenger rail line. Continuing with the proposal here, the rezone request would be to rezone the 3 highlighted parcels in yellow on this particular exhibit on the screen. So on the north side of the site and the east side of the site, those properties are currently zoned CCMU, commercial community mixed use, and they would restrict residential land uses. The southwest portion of the site is currently zoned RM, and the request is to zone that MUR. The rest of the site is currently zoned MUR, so this rezone request would rezone this entire site into MUR, which would allow for residential and commercial uses. This is a quick exhibit of the land use map that's associated with the Highway 42 revitalization plan. This would be amended as part of this application. The exhibit on the left is the existing land use plan, Exhibit A. The exhibit on the right would be the proposed land use plan. So again, this would be amended with this particular application. As you know, this includes a preliminary plat. The request on the preliminary plat is to subdivide the 10.7 acre site into 60 townhome lots, which would allow for the future fee simple sale of those units. So these would be home ownership units. You can see the townhome lots central to the site there. Now we have 4 outlots on the site that include drainage, detention areas, utility areas, private streets, open space, and private parks that total just over 23,000 square feet on this site. As part of this application, the city would accept 1.2 acres of right-of-way to be dedicated via this plat. That right-of-way would account for the Front Street connection through South Boulder Road and then the completion of Cannon Circle as well. We'll see, I have a highlighted exhibit that shows those right-of-way completions. More detail on the PUD here. As you know, 60 townhomes would be proposed here. 96 apartments would be included. Those apartments would be provided in a mix of 2 mixed-use buildings that are directly adjacent to South Boulder Road, and then 2 exclusively multifamily buildings, 24 units in each building, I believe. The buildings adjacent to South Boulder Road would include that commercial space on the ground floor. Those would just be those 2 units that are central to the site and adjacent to South Boulder Road. Again, just 13,500 square feet of commercial space there. The Front Street and Cannon Circle connection is depicted here. You can see those connections shown in blue. Those are currently unimproved right-of-ways that would be dedicated with this project and built out. 23,258 square feet of private park space, including 316 parking spaces, so the site is appropriately parked. They're not taking advantage of our recent prohibition on parking minimums on this particular site with their new application. And then those new streets will include detached sidewalks and tree lawns. Run through the blocks here real quick. So block 1 proposes 32 micro townhomes. Those micro townhomes are between 350 and 400 square feet in size, 22 to 25 feet high, with a centralized pocket park in the middle. The applicant states that those will be available at an attainable price point. I'll allow the applicant to speak more on that product. Block 2, shown in the exhibit highlighted in green, will include 36 4 and 5 unit townhomes up to a maximum height of 40 feet. This particular block includes the centralized private park, which would have a 20,908 square foot open space area. Again, this would be a private park. Block 3, adjacent to the rail line and on the southwest side of the site, will include 32 3 and 6 unit townhomes. The applicant has proposed height-restricted townhomes on the south side of that to a maximum height of 34 feet to provide a transition to the Little Italy neighborhood. Maximum permitted heights in the Little Italy neighborhood would be 35 feet. The applicant is proposing a maximum height of 34 feet, again, for the units on the south end of that leg of Block 3. Other units on the north side of that would be allowed to be 40 feet in height, in line with the rest of the entitlements that would be permitted on the lot through the PUD process. Block 4, again highlighted in green, includes those 2 mixed-use buildings with ground floor commercial to a maximum height of 45 feet. These buildings are directly adjacent to South Boulder Road. Block 5 consists of the exclusively multifamily properties on the west side of the site and associated parking. And then this is, of course, where the special review use is required to allow multifamily or residential dwelling units on the ground floor of a multifamily building in the mixed-use residential zone district. Of course, the intent of that requirement is to achieve a mix of uses on site. So jumping into analysis here for the rezone, we have a number of policies or declarations for rezone policies, and Generally, an application would only need to meet one of those particular requests. This particular application, staff find meets policy number 2 for a rezone, which states that the area for which the rezoning is requested has changed or is changing to such a degree that it is in the public interest to encourage a redevelopment of the area. So again, it's important to remember that this would apply to the CCMU portions and then the RM portion that's on the southern portion of the site. The applicant did include an updated market analysis, but this most recent application, and that market analysis shows weak market conditions that do not support large-scale retail, such as the 30,000 square feet that was entitled previously in 2016 on this site, and that office development and retail demand are currently limited in the area, and more specifically, they're limited to users like gas and convenience and quick service restaurants and financial services, with some of those larger format retailers becoming scarce. So the market feasibility analysis from CBRE supports policy number 2, but again, the applicant is providing 13,500 square feet of commercial space adjacent to South Boulder Road. The preliminary plat has been reviewed, and staff have found that this conforms to City of Louisville standards, including Title 16 subdivisions. It is consistent with our comprehensive plan. We'll discuss that a bit later here when we talk about policy compliance, as this property is located in an urban center. The South Boulder Road urban center is identified by the comprehensive plan, and then also within an urban corridor in our comprehensive plan. I'll touch on this here, as this has been a topic of conversation, which is public land dedication on this particular site. Public land dedication is triggered as a requirement of subdivision generally, or rather that provision is located within our subdivision ordinance. So public land dedication, the public land dedication requirement has not been waived, or no variance has been granted for public land dedication requirement. It simply doesn't apply to this property. It's important to note that this is not a new interpretation. I think as the Planning Commission are aware, this practice for public land dedication has been in place for quite some time. And the interpretation is that if a property has been previously subdivided, then public land dedication does not apply in that particular scenario. That's been a consistent application from staff well beyond me, and is in the record for prior applications as well. So the property was previously subdivided, albeit it is an old subdivision application. That interpretation would be consistent with staff's application of that provision on other applications. The application is also requesting six waivers with this particular request. The first waiver would be from block width and length standards in the MUDDSG, which are the mixed use development design standards and guidelines. The block width and length waiver is primarily due to existing access points around the site and required access points. Staff are of the opinion that the intent of the street and block designs in the MUDDSG are satisfied because they're intended to promote a synergistic mix of uses, create a walkable space and pedestrian-oriented districts. And so the addition of Front Street here and the connection of Cannon Circle generally satisfies the intent of the connectivity required of the mixed-use district standards. Second request here is for a reduction in public sidewalk width. Our mixed-use standards actually call for a 10-foot sidewalk in the public right-of-way, which is relatively wide. The applicant's requesting a 5-foot sidewalk in this location with an 8-foot tree lawn. That would be on both sides of Front Street and then along Cannon Circle as well. Part of the justification for that is that a 5-foot width is standard for pedestrian through zones, and it's consistent with recommendations from the National Association of City Transportation Officials. Staff have supported this before for the 5-foot sidewalk width and then that 8-foot tree lawn in this particular location. The other 4 waivers here are coming directly from the municipal code, and they relate to lot width, coverage, setbacks, so on and so forth, and they support what would generally be a townhome style development. So first we have a minimum lot width of 40 feet. Townhomes would generally be in a 20 to 25 foot range, individual lots, and then again for home ownership you'd have 20 to 25 foot lots. And so staff support the reduction from 40 feet. Minimum building coverage of 40%. Again, that doesn't necessarily support townhome development and or the densities that are required in the MUR district. I mean, we have a minimum and a maximum density required in this district. The 20-foot rear yard setback, again, allows for coverages and densities to be achieved. And then there is also a requirement that 70% of all street-facing property lines must contain a building. And so that's a pretty significant push of buildings up to streets all the way around the site. That would include Highway 42, both legs of Cannon Circle, and both sides of Front Street. That's a really urbanized development pattern, and so the applicant is actually requesting relief from the 70% standard. In this particular instance, staffs do support these waivers as they've been presented. Inclusionary housing, the applicant has indicated their intent to satisfy the standard by providing 12% on-site affordable units. I think, as you are aware, the half of those units shall be at or below 60% of AMI or area median income. The other half shall be provided between 60 and 80% of area median income. And it's important to note that those units that are dedicated as affordable have to be equivalent in design, size, and materials to the market rate units. So staff will look for an even mix between the unit types when that determination is made in a final application, or if that gets to a final application. We'll move into some analysis here, some of our comprehensive plan policies regarding this application. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the SRU piece here. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So the special review use is required for again, that multifamily ground floor piece. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I am on the SRU thing. I'm sorry, I got a bunch of slides here. I got to reorient myself for a second. Yeah, so the special review use here, let me see, where redevelopment of site lease economic stability and light. Yeah, so this is SRU standards. So the SRU standards specifically look for compliance with our comprehensive plan policies, and then also to ensure that external effects of the proposed special review use are controlled for and negative adjacent impacts are considered. And so our comprehensive plan policies, I think, as you'll see here, support additional residential in this site and additional density. They also indicate or look for economic stability. You know, we find that the redevelopment of the site will lead to economic stability, and it is in line with the Highway 42 revitalization plan and other adopted plans. The site functions efficiently. The external effects are controlled for with appropriate lighting, building and site design, and additional road networks. Of course, this SRU is proposed at the northwest corner of the site, closest to South Boulder Road. And then additional pedestrian ways and further improvements along South Boulder Road will be included with this particular improvement to further reduce negative impacts in the adjacent area with that SRU in that location. The mixed-use design standards, or mixed-use development design standards and guidelines, which we use as the primary design review document for this application, are generally found to be satisfied with the two waivers that have been requested. So these design guidelines establish standards for site design, circulation, and building form within our mixed-use overlay and our mixed-use districts. They look for street and block layouts that mirror downtown Louisville's street network or the connectivity provided in downtown Louisville, creating a walkable district. The street connections promote multimodal access and improve circulation and visibility and support future connections to surrounding neighborhoods. Our block lot and design standards and connectivity are presented in the MUD DSG. We find that this application implements the intent of the mixed-use design standards, and that overall it helps the goal of a cohesive and mixed-use environment, which was intended with the Highway 42 revitalization area, and then those mixed-use design standards as well. A bit of additional information from our comp plan here. So the property is within our Highway 42 and South Boulder Road Urban Center as designated by the currently applicable 2013 comprehensive plan. It also puts this property in the urban corridor. That plan calls for an interconnected street network, multimodal access in this location, and then pedestrian scale buildings and design, which would be pulled up to the street and generally within that 2 to 3 story height range that are proposed internal to this site. This area supports redevelopment with mid to high density multifamily and mixed commercial uses. Again, this is all part of that urban center and urban corridor designation. It envisions a cohesive walkable center with new street connections and smaller parcels, of which this application shows. And the corridor development type promotes retail, commercial, and multifamily uses that reinforce that connected urban fabric. So you can see this particular application. Here's a screenshot from our comprehensive plan, which specifically calls for a front street connection in this location. Additional comp plan policies that this meets is streets shall form an interconnected network. This is our neighborhood and housing policies that we find in our comprehensive plan. Policy NH34 looks for diverse housing opportunities to be available to residents of varying income levels. This application provides a variety of housing types and ownership options. The character and identity of existing residential neighborhoods should be maintained while allowing for the evolution and reinvestment. Obviously, Little Italy is directly adjacent to this neighborhood. This vacant property is being developed in accordance with the adopted policies and the adopted code provisions that we currently have. Housing should support vibrant retail and commercial centers that serve local residents. We have additional housing and additional commercial proposed on this particular site. There should be a mix of housing types to meet changing economic, social, and multi-generational needs of those who reside and would like to reside in Louisville. Again, that's policy NH5. Policy NH 5.3 includes higher density housing should be located primarily in the centers and corridors of the framework. So again, this last slide that you saw was actually from the framework plan and the comprehensive plan. This is located in the South Boulder Road center and corridor, and it does call for high density housing in this area. And then the city should be responsive to market opportunities as they occur and maintain and enhance the city's competitive position to attract development that adheres to the adopted community vision. The South Boulder Road Small Area Plan also applies in this particular area. This designates the site as medium density residential for a dwelling unit count of 10 to 20 dwelling units per acre. That is in line with what's required of our mixed use development standards in this area in the mixed use district. The retail office use aligns with the property's current CCMU zoning, although that retail office would also align with the MUR that's proposed there as a mix of uses required on properties that are greater than 5 acres in size in our mixed-use district. The South Boulder Road Plan encourages new street connections, including the Front Street connection, to strengthen the overall network connectivity and support a walkable mixed-use environment. Again, this is a screenshot from our South Boulder Road Small Area Plan that shows that the Front Street connection was called for in this adopted plan as well. Our Transportation Master Plan, which was adopted in 2019, is a really broad policy plan. Has a lot of great information in it. It provides a citywide framework for a safe, efficient, and multimodal transportation system, and it guides near and long-term decisions that are consistent with community visions and then land use goals and adopted policies in the city. Staff find this application is consistent with the Transportation Master Plan, specifically the 3 primary goals of the Transportation Master Plan, which are efficient and safe transportation systems. This particular plan adds vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian connections that minimize network conflicts with projected volumes. Cohesive and layered system of streets and trails is another goal of this plan. This development expands multimodal connectivity for walking, biking, and driving. Complete streets that enhance livability. The Front Street connection improves circulation for all modes of transportation in this area. And the applicant has proactively included traffic calming and improvements that would amount to safer pedestrian crossings in some of the area to address some of the concerns around the Front Street connection. In our housing plan is one of the more recent plans that have been adopted, and there's some primary goals of the housing plan, and those are to increase opportunities for residential development citywide in appropriate locations, to expand and maintain access to affordable housing. Of course, we have an affordable housing provision. In order to get that affordable housing, we need developers and projects that are willing to build those affordable houses or those affordable products. Another goal here is diversify housing stock through mixed use and mixed income neighborhoods. So those are the three primary goals of the plan. Some key actions that are in that plan that do support this application Action 1.1, supporting rezoning and redevelopment of underutilized commercial property for additional residential capacity. Of course, we have 2 vacant commercial properties on this particular site where a rezone would allow for additional residential. Action 3.2, which advocates for expanding opportunities for multifamily housing within commercial zones. Again, the rezone from CCMU to MUR would support this policy. And then in the housing needs assessment included as an addendum to that housing plan, there's an identified advancing goals to diversify Louisville's housing stock to meet future demand. And of course, there's a diversity of housing types proposed with this particular application, both home ownership and rental opportunities on this particular proposal. So we'll jump into the traffic study here. We'll spend a little bit more time for everyone's benefit on this one. The updated study, again, we went over the scoping of the new study, but it did include new counts. So the applicant actually updated the counts. I believe that was part of the original concern, is that the counts were a bit outdated. So the applicant updated their counts. We expanded intersection analysis at the request of Planning Commission and concerns generated by local residents, and then considered long-term conditions, again, with and without the Front Street connection. So the results show that the development integrates safely and efficiently into the roadway network with the Front Street connection. Those are the results of the traffic impact study. The connection provides the improved circulation and traffic distribution. It provides traffic redundancy and network resilience in this area where we have a major primary arterial through the city, 2 major primary arterials, and then safer, more efficient operations consistent with city and regional planning efforts. So in regard to the traffic impact study, staff do find that the connection for Front Street not only meets a number of our adopted policies and our mixed-use development design standards and guidelines, but it also provides a connection that's essential to maintaining acceptable traffic conditions and network compatibility in this area. This is an exhibit of proposed traffic calming measures that the applicant has provided. They've included a curb extensions, bulb outs, and a raised crosswalk on the northernmost portion of the site there in blue. They've included additional curb extensions and bulb outs at the Front Street and Harper Street intersection, although we have the applicant has proposed, again, a novel approach to reduce cut-through traffic there that I'll show you here in a bit. And these are all recommendations that come out of the traffic impact study, by the way. There's some additional intersection improvements at Front Street and Griffith Street to support crossings in that area, including additional bulb outs, potentially raised crosswalks in that location for students that may be going to school on the north side of Griffith Street to Louisville Middle School. Obviously, there's a concern with the train crossing in that location and queuing backing up there, right, and then blocking that intersection at Front Street and Griffith Street. The application or the study rather also recommends signing that intersection and then marking the pavement with do not block intersection signage so that intersection remains open in the event that vehicles are queuing when a train is there. On the upper right-hand side, you'll see that there is staff originally, or rather this application originally proposed to close an access point to a private property that's located in the northeast corner of the site. It actually has 2 access points, one from Cannon Circle, and you can see the arrow pointing to it there, and then one from South Boulder Road. We did receive an objection from that property owner, and the property owner has agreed to work with us to reduce the size of that access point to allow vehicles to queue at the stop bar when they're northbound on Cannon Circle. There's currently a very, very small queue. Only one vehicle can actually queue there next to the access point. And so the property owner is going to work with us to move that access point south so that we can get additional vehicle queuing there so we don't get additional backups in South Boulder Road or at Cannon Circle. And the same method will be applied. Do not block intersection signage with pavement marking. So we're thankful that that property owner is working with us on that closure to make that, again, a safer intersection in that particular location. This is what the applicant has proposed for the Front Street and Harper Street connection. Staff are generally supportive of a concept that is similar to this. What's proposed here is that we would potentially consider ending the right-of-way on Front Street in this location. So you can see what's in red would actually end the right-of-way. The red curvilinear line on the south is with the existing extent of the right-of-way. And we would ask for an easement, a public access easement over this location that would include a raised design that would discourage cut-through traffic in this particular location. It would be neck down and narrowed to a size that would be appropriate, more specifically for emergency access. Louisville Fire Department would have to work out the details on what the design actually be, but the applicant would actually enhance this area to make it look more like a pedestrian access or potentially a bicycle access point while still allowing vehicular movements through this location. I'll let the applicant speak a little bit more to this. They used this concept on a very, very similar development in another jurisdiction here on the Front Range, and we felt that it may be an appropriate solution to keep Front Street open, allow vehicular movements through this site right here, or through this particular location, and then also hopefully address some of the neighboring concerns. So again, this is conceptual at this point, but we have told the applicant we're willing to consider something that's close to this, and so we can talk about this a little bit more. With that, I think I'll go ahead and call Cameron up, and he can discuss some of the details of, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. You bet. Yeah, planner post. So that connection there is the intersection between the existing Front Street as it goes through Little Italy and then the newly platted portion of Front Street heading to the north there. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And again, the intent there would be to discourage cut-through traffic. I'll be completely honest, we don't want project-generated traffic to be discouraged from using that intersection. That's the whole purpose of asking for the Front Street connection there and getting that connectivity. However, in listening to neighboring concerns with potential cut-through traffic in that location, we felt that this was maybe an appropriate method to address some of those items.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understood the location.
Thanks, yep. Another question, Commissioner Basket.
Clarifying question on this as well. So the traffic counts that you reviewed a few minutes ago, that assumes this configuration?
It does not, no. That's something we might have to take a closer look at. We imagine that count might drop at that point if that's the case. But again, that count only takes in those counts that we discussed are project-generated traffic, not through traffic or cut-through traffic. So hard to say at this point, but I think maybe our city engineer and then the applicant's traffic engineer can provide a bit more information on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. Evening, Commissioners. Cameron Folks, I'm the City Engineer in Public Works. About a year ago, we went through this development as well, and in prep for this meeting, I met with planning staff to go over the zoning on the property, and I said this in the last Planning Commission hearing, and I want to restate it, is that, development of this parcel within the allowable zoning would require the Front Street connection based on engineering staff's review of this. So this is needed for the overall health of the transportation network, provides better emergency access and shorter response times. It also creates a balanced distribution of traffic from the site. And some of this information is repeat, so I apologize, but I think it's important to say, so without the Front Street connection, as Matt stated, creates a 40 to 85% increase in the U-turns on South Boulder Road and Highway 42. We think this will be similar over on Highway 42 as well. And that's just, for safety reasons, This is an arterial street with higher speeds, creating that U-turn movement, creates a bigger likelihood of crashes with vehicle and vehicle pedestrians. So, and then we have the vehicle weave movement. So leaving the site, vehicles would have to cross, 2 to 3 lanes of traffic to be able to make this U-turn within, 400 feet of this intersection. So again, not an ideal situation on an arterial street. Staff reviewed the updated trip distribution model, and this kind of goes to the revised connection point, but staff's opinion is that's a pretty conservative trip distribution for the Front Street traffic heading south. So it's definitely a worst case scenario. Staff believes that actual traffic going south and even implementing the revised connection point there would even likely reduce that. So we think that's definitely a worst case scenario, and the actual traffic at that location would be less. The applicants also proposed traffic calming, as Matt stated. So we have raised crosswalks, bump outs, also the curvilinear street. And I know it's not super curvy, but it does have a slight bend in it. All these things will kind of deter cut through traffic and also help lower speeds on the local street. So the last thing I've kind of got here is the level of service for the intersection. So they looked at it with and without the Front Street connections, and basically the level of service is acceptable for all the added intersections that we looked at with the scoping study with the applicant. So with the Front Street connection, level of service stays within acceptable levels for the traffic. So that's what I have. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt, or if you guys have questions.
Thank you. Yeah, please, let's open it up.
Thank you very much, Engineer Folks. Maybe just a couple questions. So I want to make sure I heard one of the first things that you said correctly, which was if the site wasn't rezoned, but was just built with the current entitlements that it has, there would still be this recommendation to make the connection from Front Street for kind of all the reasons that we.
Yep, for all the reasons that have been here, yeah. So we met specifically on the zoning of this just to make sure, like, hey, if we did the minimum zoning, would we still require that based on the counts and the number of units that we would have here, that's still the case, correct?
Okay, that's very helpful. And then I'm aware of this other project, and it was mentioned in the traffic report as well. The Future 42, do we have a sense of when those improvements might be coming? So let's, like the Griffith intersection on State Highway 42. I'm sure it's hard to make those predictions, but
it is
okay.
difficult. It's currently not funded. We're currently in a cycle where we're putting in applications with DRCOG for master planning efforts, and the Future 42 project is in the master planning efforts for that, but
Okay.
that doesn't guarantee any funds by any years. So,
Okay.
Best guess is definitely probably 5 years out at a very minimum, and it could be, 10, 20.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional questions for staff on any issue?
Yeah, actually, planner post, I'm talking about the multi-use, the ground floor approval to make that dwelling units. Currently, the plan is for 96 apartments. I presume that would increase the number of apartments.
I don't believe so. No, the 96 is planned with the intent or with the consideration of an SRU approval.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, please go ahead.
For either of you, there was some public comment about the alleyway behind that northern row of homes in Little Italy. You want to address where we're at with that? Yeah.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Yeah, I think we've discussed this as a staff. The original plan didn't include any improvements to the alley. You can see the alley here on this, just so everyone knows what we're talking about. This is the alley that Commissioner Moline is asking about. We will request that the applicant improve this alley with this application when this comes to final. Obviously, we need to work closely with the property owners in Little Italy, because there hasn't been really an established extent, but there is right-of-way in this location. It is city right-of-way. I will note that there are 2 unplatted properties here We've been talking to one of the property owners there in an effort to ensure that they're able to retain alley access. Currently, they actually access from the backside. The applicant has indicated that they'll assist those homeowners in potentially developing exhibits and easements and/or platting those properties so that we can actually dedicate alley. I'll let the homeowners speak on that too. I don't want to speak for them, but
Okay.
we want to work with them to ensure that they retain alley access there.
Okay, maybe just one more little clarification here. So the alley is technically not part of the application. It's a right-of-way between the existing, or a portion of the existing subdivision that's city right-of-way and south technically of the application itself. Is that
That's
right?
correct. That's
Okay,
correct,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
I should note too, I don't believe we've told the applicant we're going to ask for right-of-way approvals there, so that's it. They can give you their thoughts on that.
Okay.
Great.
All right, additional questions?
Yeah,
Commissioner
actually,
Banks?
just further clarification on that alley access. Is it currently accessed from the east across the unplatted lots? Sorry, from the west?
Oh, yeah, from it is, yeah, it's access from Highway 42 at the moment, but also too, this is, you can ask the folks here in Little Italy, they may access it in multiple locations at this point, but generally it would be accessible right now legally from Highway 42. And then there is also this access point here on one of the private street connections within the actual development to the alley.
I guess that's a question for the applicant as to where access would be. So it's not proposed that access would be connecting to Front Street?
No, that's correct. Right, yeah, no.
And Commissioner Hunt, I can't quite, it doesn't look like you have a hand raised at all now. Just wanted to double check.
I don't. I had raised my hand, but Commissioner Moline was reading my mind and asked me the exact question I was going to about the current entitlements and the need for the Front Street connection. So
Great,
that was my question.
appreciate it. Additional questions for staff at this time?
I've got a couple more slides just to finish off here.
Yeah.
And then I'll just piggyback off of what Cameron said here previously when he mentioned that any development on this property would require the connection to Front Street. Again, our mixed-use design standards call for a minimum of 12 dwelling units per acre on this site. All right, so at 10 acres, we're looking at 120 dwelling units per acre at a minimum that would be mandated by the mixed-use design guidelines and standards, the mixed-use overlay district, and our adopted policies as well. So I want to make sure that information is there. Continuing on here, what you see on screen when Cameron was talking here on the right is a total traffic level of service with the Front Street connection. A level of service of A through D is generally considered acceptable. Level of service, for those that may be unaware, is a measure of delay at an intersection. So for example, I believe an A level of service would be a 0 to 10 second delay at an intersection. And if we're looking at what would be considered a failing intersection, E's and F's would be considered failing intersections, and those would generally be delays at 55 seconds or greater in peak hours. So again, we're considering peak hours with these movements, AM peak hours, PM peak hours. So what you see in red are failing intersections, and then the orange with E's are also failing intersections. This is the projected level of service with the Front Street connections. However, if you look at the existing background volumes, they're generally similar here. Those are tough intersections at Highway 42 and South Boulder Road at the moment, regardless of any development that comes in with increased volumes. What's on the left here is that vehicle per day table, that 1,000 vehicle per day threshold that we discussed, but this would be just movements through the Front Street intersection, so anticipated Front Street traffic volumes with and without the connection between South Boulder Road and Griffith Street. And so you can see the 2045 build out with the Front Street connection. We're anticipated to see 79 vehicles per hour through that location and 93. And then with a breakdown of what that time gap would look like, although there is a peak hour within the peak hour that I want to be sure that we get in there, right? So there's a 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. The true peak is like a 45-minute window. I think it's between 7:45 and 8:30, maybe potentially it's somewhere in there. So I just the absolute 1 car per every 45 seconds, it isn't necessarily accurate, but it's just a good representation of the number of vehicles that would move through there, and obviously a significant difference from no connection in that area. So we just want to make sure that folks are able to see that. And so that concludes staff's presentation here. So staff continue to recommend approval of an ordinance to rezone portions of the Caledonia Place subdivision plat from CCMU and residential medium density to mixed-use residential density, and amending Exhibit A land use map referenced in LMC Chapter 1714. And that ordinance would if just so that the planning commission are aware that the rezone ordinance were to be approved tonight would actually move forward to city council for a first reading and a second reading, and that would become effective. The preliminary plat and the preliminary PUD, of course, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, I apologize, but if they move forward, so Planning Commission makes a recommendation tonight. This moves forward to City Council. If those applications move forward and are approved, they would then move into the final process, final plat and final PUD. If it gets to that stage, you will see this application again in final form. We'll have some more detailed engineering at that point with some changes, but just so everyone is aware, this is there are the two differences there: the ordinance for the rezone and then the resolution for the preliminary PUD and plat. So we recommend approval of the ordinance rezoning those portions of the property. We also recommend approval of this resolution approving the Coal Creek Village prelim PUD and plat with the following conditions. First condition here is that the applicant will work with staff within that final PUD process to redesign the proposed sidewalk and right-of-way improvements adjacent to South Boulder Road. What's currently depicted is actually an attached sidewalk or a connected condition. We want a detached sidewalk in that location. Again, a detached sidewalk would be a sidewalk and a tree lawn and then the street. Right now it's attached, and so there's enough room there to work that out. We would hammer through those details on a final plan. Second condition here is the final PUD shall comply with Colorado Senate Bill 24005, which prohibits non-functional turf. You all should be seeing a code amendment relatively soon for that, and so that would apply to this particular application. Third conditions here are, of course, the improvements that are described in the traffic calming exhibit that was on screen previously, including the Front Street, Harper Street design concept, shall be incorporated into the final PUD and plat applications subject to further staff review. So we'll work with the applicant to ensure that those designs meet our standards and emergency access conditions, and then incorporate those into a final PUD and plat. And then the applicant shall work with staff and the property owner at 1110 East South Boulder Road to modify the plans as necessary to ensure that vehicular access to the property from Cannon Circle is provided. This is part of that access point I talked about earlier with that commercial property owner, where we're asking them to shift their access point south so that we have a safer queuing condition at Cannon Circle for northbound movements out of that lane. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Cameron is available. The applicant does have a presentation tonight as well.
Thank you. Can we start now?
Yeah. Senior Planner Post, you didn't really address, I know a lot of the community comment has been about drainage concerns.
Yeah, I'll let Cameron talk about that.
So information provided in the preliminary drainage report, and again, it's preliminary at this level, but I know there were some concerns at the initial meeting about drainage going towards Little Italy, but based on our review of the drainage report and the detention pond, the design, again, it's in preliminary stage, so there's not a lot of detail there, but based on the design currently, we don't see any issues with drainage entering the Little Italy neighborhood. Everything's designed to go to the detention pond and across Highway 42 in the historic pattern. So based on our preliminary review of it, again, there's not a lot of detailed information. As we move towards final plat and a final drainage report, a lot more detail will be provided, and we can, kind of react to it at that point. But they're not going to be able to push any of the drainage south into the alley or to the Little Italy neighborhood.
And maybe just a clarification. So currently, one of the drainage ways goes through the, is that the right way to say this? That one of the drainage ways is going through this site, this property, and then conveying under State Highway 42?
Correct. The drainage way technically starts at Highway 42,
Okay.
but correct. They have to get all the drainage from their site and some overflow from the Goodhue ditch through their site and over to Highway 42, which then it goes underneath Highway 42 and across the Harney-Listoka property.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. One other question regarding traffic, right? Obviously, we don't usually plan for failure, whether it's D or E or F. And so I'm thinking like in a green field, you would just have bigger streets, right? With higher volumes and signalized intersections. And so is it simply just a function of this size of neighborhood that prevents us from accommodating larger traffic flows?
So if I'm hearing the question right, you're wondering why streets aren't bigger. So it's really, when we talk about level of service, it's at the intersections. And so we have a lot of failing intersections that are here currently that this development, whether you add it or don't add it, that intersection is still going to be failing. So we're talking about Highway 42 and South Boulder Road specifically, which is in the plan for the city to do on the future 42 piece. The rest of the intersections that we analyzed, or we had the engineer analyze, the difference between with the Front Street connection and without the Front Street connection is negligible. So.
Thanks. And just to fill people in, so future 42, that calls for 2 lanes in each direction.
Correct. And improvements at the intersections as well as multimodal improvements. So yeah, there'll be 2 lanes each direction on future 42 once that's all constructed.
Thank you. Any additional questions at this time? Seeing none. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and invite the applicant up in about, 5 minutes, 7:37. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. If we can reconvene now, everybody can take their seats. And there are a few seats in the back of the room over on this side. If anybody still needs them. Thank you all. Can we wrap up our conversations, please? Yeah, I know. I don't have it anymore. I can't really use it. All right, thank you. Can we wrap up the conversations, please? Thank you. Welcome back. We'll welcome the applicant up. If you'll begin with your name and city of residence.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Sam Coots. I'm land planner and landscape architect with Ripley Design out of Fort.
If we can keep the side comments down, please, in the back. Thank you.
Out of Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm here representing the applicant Markel Homes for the presentation tonight. And I know Matt did a very thorough presentation. I'm going to try to keep it short and sake of brevity. I think we all know the various applications in front of you tonight. If you have any questions about those, let us know. I'm going to focus mostly on what's happened between the last hearing and tonight to fill in a little bit of the color in the background story there. I think a lot of detail was said about the site plan itself. I did want to highlight, now that we've got a colored version here of where that central pocket park is in the townhome area there in the central block, and then a second pocket park in the southeast corner for the micro townhome area. Detention is down there on the southeast corner. We've got color now, so it's a little easier to see those. And then we had in the last hearing some depictions of what those spaces might feel like. So I just wanted to jog our memories a bit of that. So here's the mixed-use plaza between the two mixed-use buildings, what that might feel like. Just giving you a sense of scale of how big that pocket park in the central townhome area is and what it could feel like. Again, the playground in the micro townhome area. This is the vision for the streetscape. I know the non-functional bill turf is passed, or bill is passed, so this is something that complies with that. Very ornamental, a lot of perennials, pedestrian scale. The architecture was covered pretty well. I think the main goal from the applicant here is to achieve a really cohesive look and feel, even though we have a lot of different ideas happening. We've got commercial, multifamily, townhomes, micro townhomes. How do you establish this architectural vernacular that talks the same language? It feels like a cohesive development, but you are able to discern, the commercial from the townhome. So that's the overarching goal there. I think this was covered really well, but just a map of the various intersections that were added and studied in this revised TIS. And I think to start that story, the hearing was tabled in October, and our team immediately went to work. And it takes a lot of time to update traffic studies and traffic counts and add all these extra analysis. There's a ton of analysis that went into this report. So it did take all the way until July of this year to wrap that up, make sure we've got a really well-studied, well-vetted report. And so then it was in the city's hands. They did a great review on it and ultimately approved that report in August. Just to zoom out and talk about the methodology of how this report was generated, the first step is to figure out what is background traffic. What is the existing traffic? And so that's what you see on your left. And so that includes all the existing counts that were gathered. A growth factor applied for the 2 years. We included the Dello Boom development, and all of that itself is gathered and as background traffic. From there, the study took two directions, two scenarios. What is background plus the project traffic when Front Street is connected? What is background plus project traffic when Front Street is not connected? And so that was the big goal of the study, was to figure that out. And I think this was talked about a lot, but just to reinforce what the recommendations of that study was, is that when you have that Front Street connection, it does provide for redundancy in the transportation network. It creates this gridded street. There's a lot of good that comes out of gridded streets. There's more capacity in the system as a whole, greater circulation, and ultimately, when you have that redundancy, you're able to create narrower streets, which are better for pedestrians. So aside from the gridded street, the great things that come out of a gridded street, there's the recommendations of all the traffic calming that was discussed. I think this was really well covered from Matt. If you have any questions, let us know. Our traffic engineer is here to talk more detail. When we look at the recommendations of what happens without that Front Street connection, I think one point is important is that the level of service requirements are still met. So that's a good thing to know. However, it does put strain on some dangerous movements on South Boulder Road, particularly coming out of the development and needing to weave across several lanes of traffic in order to get to an already difficult intersection on an arterial road to pull the U-turn to head west. So that is a concern of our traffic engineer in the city. And so that is something that I think weighs heavily on the recommendation of what happens without a Front Street connection. But again, from a level of service standpoint, it was just one way to think about traffic study is that those requirements are met. Either way, both scenarios, Front Street open or closed, that Front Street stays well within its capacity limits. Even if it's open, it is well under capacity. There are several offsite improvements that need to be made, whether that is closed or open, and that's limiting access onto South Boulder Road from Cannon, onto Highway 42 from Cannon, and then extending a turn lane as you enter, taking a right into the development, heading eastbound on South Boulder Road. So what I want to focus on is obviously we have a very passionate neighborhood with us. We've got Little Italy here, and it took us a year to do this study, and we want to make sure that the full story is told. We came out after the city had approved the traffic study in August, and we sat down with the neighborhood and discussed it. Our first goal is just to get it out in front and say, here's the results. We studied it every way we could, and here is what the traffic study conclusions are. As you may discern, that there's still a concern about this connection to Front Street and what that means. And this table kind of tells the story of why. This is 20 years out, what that is. And this is in that peak hour or so with the Front Street connection. That is, and again, talking averages, one car every 45 seconds or so coming down Front Street through to Griffith there. And without the Front Street, that's one car every 6.5 minutes. Now, while one car every 45 seconds meets all of the traffic requirements, that engineering standard-wise, that is perfectly fine. But as a resident, you feel that. You feel a difference between 45 seconds and 1 minute, or sorry, 6.5 minutes. So as the applicant, we heard that. We heard the concern, and we said, I think we can do better here. I think we can find a win-win-win scenario. Let's find a win for the neighbors. Let's figure out how we can reduce some traffic. Let's find a win for the city. Let's make sure we give them a plan that meets their comprehensive plan, all of their policies, all their standards, creates connectivity where it's needed. And obviously we need a win for the applicant. They have to have a project that is financially feasible. And so we went off to work and studied and drew maybe a dozen plus different ideas of how to change the plan to find this win-win-win scenario. When we started that study, a couple things stood out. Where we looked back at this schematic of, well, what's the big difference here, whether it's connected or not? One thing stood out is that when the Front Street is connected, there's this added piece of the puzzle that gets generated for traffic, and that's the diverted traffic through Front Street. So if you're on South Boulder Road and that intersection's backed up, you want to head south on 42, there's diversion now that Front Street enables. We poked at that a little bit. Well, how much is that? And so this is in 20 years, this is kind of an anticipated volume of how much diversion comes through Front Street. And if you look at the pie, that's 2/3 of the traffic on Front Street is coming from cut-through traffic. So that jumped out to us immediately. This seems like something we might be able to impact here. It's hard to impact project-generated traffic because the only way to do that is reduce units. Only way to reduce units now creates not a financially feasible plan. It's hard to impact traffic in other existing conditions. Existing conditions are what they are. But this is something we can really look at is the cut-through traffic. So out of our studies, again, I think we drew a dozen or so different ideas of how could we look at this. We came in September and met with the neighborhood again and presented a handful of kind of the best of those ideas, showed them, here are some ideas we heard. Here's why they may not be a win-win-win. We need 3 wins in this to be a success. But we do have one. We do have one idea that is the win-win-win scenario. And that's what we've discussed here so far. And so this is background. This is an idea I've actually used in another municipality up in Fort Collins on a project. It was extremely similar, large multifamily development, being forced to connect to a small enclave of existing single-family homes, and very similar situation. This was implemented with a lot of great results. And the idea here is that you terminate the right-of-way, so you have 2 separate right-of-ways. That enables Front Street to be named Front Street. Everyone's still addressed off Front Street. The new development, that right-of-way that's being platted now gets a separate name. And so that's, to be determined street headed north to South Boulder Road. What this does is, from a navigation standpoint, when we work with the city's GIS team at Final Plat, there are ways to plug this in so that the apps, Google Maps and Waze, don't recognize that there's a connection here. So now when you're on South Boulder Road, you're backed up because of the failing intersection. Google Maps isn't going to tell you, hey, take Front Street down through the neighborhood. So again, we want to attack just a portion of the problem. We can't solve all of the issues, but that seemed like a really good way to start. So the way this is designed then, it's twofold. We want to make sure this is a legal vehicular access. So while there's no right-of-way, there is a public access easement over it. There's emergency access easement over it. So fire, ambulance can get through here. The public still legally allowed to cross through here. But it's designed in such a way that feels pedestrian. It feels like a spot where people should be, not where vehicles should be. So if you do happen to drive down Front Street, you are discouraged. It doesn't jump out as, oh, I'm going to go straight shot through here. And the way we do that, I'll come back to that, is this is an elevated, like a speed table, a little bit more exaggerated. You can score it nicely, make it feel more like a plaza. Maybe it's colored concrete. Details are still in the works. This is concept at the time, but this is what that could feel like. So from a pedestrian level, this feels nice. It's got some enhanced landscape next to it. It narrows that point of view, discouraging some vehicular traffic. From a vehicle standpoint, you see this tighter space. It doesn't jump out as this is a thoroughfare. This is not a way to get north. It does look like, okay, I probably could. I'm not going to say it reduces all of the traffic through the neighborhood, but it's a good way to mitigate as much as we can here. In the example in Fort Collins, this is actually a sheet right out of that plan, just to show you how they implemented this. The existing street was Lupine here on the left. That's the existing right-of-way. The multifamily development was on the right. There's their public right-of-way. We had joined it by a private drive, and even put this kind of chicane movement in that access, and put some community gardens next to it, so that did actually encourage pedestrian activity too. If you've got a family standing on this plaza gardening, again, another deterrent to vehicles, even though they're allowed to connect through here. So this is just one example of how this can be done. This is kind of, the final plan level, but obviously we're not there yet on this application. So I just wanted to throw out kind of some color behind where we started, what the last year looked like. We're really trying to make a great scenario for all involved here. And I want to just end with the housing plan, because I think this development does a lot of good for Louisville. It's the most recently adopted plan and has some really kind of shocking data about housing in Louisville and where we're headed and what do we do if we don't start doing something creative here. And some of those creative solutions are rezoning vacant or underutilized land, like we are here. And also looking at a lot of different types of residences. So micro townhomes is a great new creative way of achieving some attainability here. And so I think just from a bigger picture, this project can achieve a lot of good for Louisville. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more color behind the applicant's direction last year. And then we've got our traffic engineer as well as Markel Holmes here for any questions if you've got them.
Great, thank you. We can now open it up for questions of the applicant.
Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. So the question would be the traffic that would then not be routing through the solution area, where does that end up going if it wants to head west on South Boulder Road?
Yeah, I'm assuming the theoretical cut-through traffic that we're trying to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're currently headed east on South Boulder Road and you're stacked up, and you can't, maybe they want to take a right on Highway 42.
Sure.
They just continue doing that, so you're still in queue there to turn right on 42.
And for the people in this the residents in this new subdivision, if they wanted to head west on South Boulder Road, what would their route then be?
Yeah, and that's where part of the trick is of this design is, as a resident, if this is where you live, you probably know about this access. You know it's there. There's nothing prohibiting you to use it. So residents, as Matt pointed out, the city needs this connection for residents, wants it through all the comprehensive planning. So residents of this development likely use that and head south out to Maine. But the target of what we were trying to do is limit the non-resident traffic cut through.
Okay. And so that raised section then would be a private, like in Fort Collins, a private drive. Okay.
Yeah, private drive with a public easement on it, essentially.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe it's a question for your traffic engineer, but you had a slide earlier on where you were talking about some of the enhancements or mitigating actions with a Front Street connection. I saw flashing beacons and something else mentioned on one of the slides. There you go. Yeah.
I'll bring Carrie up with.
I mean, you described obviously the proposed raised pedestrian walkway. I just wondered if there were any other suggestions, because you didn't speak to the flashing beacon idea, for example.
Do you want to look at this? Let me introduce myself first. Carrie McDowell Schrader, Traffic and Transportation Engineer with McDowell Engineering.
And you're not a citizen of Louisville?
No.
Correct. Thank you.
So when we were originally talking about what appropriate traffic calming implementations would be, one of our thoughts was the pedestrian crossings at Griffith. And so that was just one of the ideas that came up. So that was left in the study. We did a couple iterations of the traffic calming plan. The RRFB came out in our final traffic calming plan. So that's how we ended up with this.
Okay, thanks.
Did that answer?
I guess can you elaborate? I mean, I see the signage and the pavement markings, but that flashing beacon reference was something that's not detailed here per se. So
Sure.
Is that a hawk or what's the idea there?
Do you have an example in town?
Yeah, city engineer Folks here. So we did review the flashing beacon, and it does need to be in a warranted situation. We don't install these unless they're in a warranted condition. And at current time, staff doesn't support installing this would be considered an RRFB. So an example would be the one by the rec center, if you guys drive around, that people push the button and the lights flash on this. So not a hawk signal, but an RFB. But just to be clear, so staff's recommendation is not to put one of these across Griffith Street at the connection as recommended by the traffic engineer.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Hunt.
Thanks. I was just following up on something that Commissioner Moline was talking about, and about the solution with the raised crossing there. Is the thinking also that it would, in addition to not being on the GPS, which I think is very creative, I had not even thought of that. Is it the thinking also that having that raised there would make it less attractive to go through because you'd have to stop and slow down and go over that hump?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is, the legal aspect, the trimming back the right of way and the easement, that's kind of how you deter the apps from recognizing it. But say you wind up on this road anyway, we still want it to feel uninviting from a car to use this connection. So at the very least, the raised, it's like a large speed table essentially. At the very least, it'll slow the traffic down that does come through. There's nothing there putting up a gate saying it can't. But yeah, you're right. That is the intent.
Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Seeing none, thank you. I will now open it up for public comment. As we do that, I'd entertain a motion to add addendum 1 to our public record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And then just remind people, if you please limit yourself to 3 minutes, we will be using the clocks. Can we fire those up right now? And if you begin with stating your name and your city of residence. We have a stack of cards, I believe. We'll start there, and then we'll also kind of weave back and forth between people who might be online and participating also.
All right, first up, we have David Finnemore.
And then in the on deck, who's up after him?
On deck, Juliana Massara.
Great, thank you. Please.
Hi, my name is David Finnemore. I live at 720 Grant Avenue. When I first moved to Louisville in 1982, I lived on Harper Street, so in Little Italy. I'm here because we keep talking about this one issue, traffic, traffic, traffic. And this site is basically fatally flawed in that regard. There's really, when you talk about the U-turns that we're trying to avoid, well, those U-turns are now going to all go out Griffith Street, and they're going to be right in front of the LMS. Have you driven there in the morning? It's not going to work. It's simply not going to work. And, we can talk about meeting city codes, standards, plans, level of service, with all due respect to that and due respect to what's actually a pretty good looking development proposal. It really comes down to you commissioners deciding if this is, this is how we end up with traffic gridlock, right? We meet codes, everybody says, yep, we did our jobs, but we still end up with this horrible traffic problem. Because you have to imagine yourself driving down the street. Is this what we want? And I don't have the solution. I'm not saying you should vote no. I'm saying there's a reason this site hasn't been developed before, I think. the raised thing is great, but the real problem is, how many units is it? However many units it is. Most people go to Boulder, right? I mean, you look at South Boulder Road in the morning. So I think we're setting ourselves up for a real problem unless we can figure out how to solve that problem. And unfortunately, I mean, I wish I had, I'm not that creative. I don't really have a good answer, and a lot of creative people have been working on it, and they haven't seemed to come up with an answer either. So I just want to sort of like shake it up and say, you know, you have to imagine what this is really going to be like, cut through or not. So anyway, that's what I'd like to say. Thanks for your everybody's work here.
Thank you. Are we able to get the clocks working?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Oh, behind me. Okay, great, thanks.
We have Juliana Massaro next, and on deck, Annabelle Mass.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Juliana Massaro. I'm an attorney with Packard and Durking, and I'm here on behalf of Snarf's Sandwiches, which is a popular, locally owned and operated sandwich shop.
Just to confirm, you're not a Louisville resident, right?
Well, I live in Lafayette. I'm just like, I don't know, a
Great.
stone's throw literally from this property, but no, I'm not a resident of Louisville. So Snarf's asked us to come and chat with you. We have been working with staff over the concerns. The original PUD showed that the applicant had requested to close a business access into the Snarf's parking lot on Cannon Street. It is the primary access point for this business, and I believe for the liquor store located just to the east. Obviously, we, just for the record, wanted to oppose any change that would close that business access, and wanted to note, only for the record, that we don't think the applicant has a right under the code to ask for the treatment of the right-of-way on the portion of the right-of-way that does not border its property. We recognize the city's traffic concerns, and so that's why we reached out to staff to try to find something that would work. It's our understanding that staff is going to recommend narrowing the business access into the parking lot by moving the curb cut maybe 6 feet to the south. It's going to narrow it maybe to 24 feet, which I understand is still an acceptable narrowing of that area. It could eliminate one of the parking spaces, but I noted on the on the parking plan that there's an excess of maybe there's an excess of like 34 parking spaces. So they're showing additional parking that isn't technically required under the code. So in addition to, I guess, this narrowing, we understand the staff wants to do some do not block paint so that the access to this parking lot isn't blocked and you don't have cars queuing where they're not intended to queue. We would support that recommendation. We would oppose putting a median anywhere on Cannon Circle. Again, this is a pretty important business access point for Snarf's as well as the liquor store nearby. So I just wanted to say thanks to staff for working with us. We're looking forward to partnering on this. And if you have any other questions, I've got more in my submitted comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Have Annabelle Mass next, and Andy Mass after that.
Come up. You can
Hi.
begin with your name and whether you live in Louisville or not.
Yes. Hello, my name is Annabelle, and I'm a resident of Louisville, Colorado. I live on the corner of Harper and Front, and I've lived here since I was born. This neighborhood consists of families and elderly, and I walk to Louisville Middle School every morning, and I have for the past 3 years since I've attended there. I already see plenty of traffic when I'm walking to school, and from parents and people trying to get to work. If roads are added, it'll just be more congested, and it'll make me concerned for the younger kids that attend my school, and including me as well. Louisville has always felt like a pretty safe town where everyone is looking out for each other. And when new development is built, I feel like families will be attracted to that. And for these reasons, it'll just make it more of a struggle and an unsafe community, since people are trying to get to place like Boulder for work, and they will not be able to take a west turn on South Boulder Road. So that would mean they would have to take alternative turns, and one of those could be going through our neighborhood, connecting them to Front Street and where the school is, and down Main Street. And considering our crossing guard isn't always there, even when they are, the walk is still a little bit dangerous and difficult. I hope this council will consider the children's safety in Louisville and all the other residents and pedestrians. Even outside of Little Italy, everyone will be affected. Please make a wise choice and take into consideration everyone, also the wildlife that can't speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it's great to support them. Thank you for coming out, but we're going to discourage any clapping after anybody speak, whether you're for or against it. Thank you. Next.
Next, I have Andy Mass, and then after that, we'll have Conrad Zeman.
Hi, Andy Moss, 1003 Harper Street. That was my daughter who spoke. So we'll be the closest to this development. We live on the corner there where they are proposing that raised area. And I don't remember his name, but the first gentleman who spoke, I couldn't do a better job. He basically summed it up like, everybody's sort of trying to cover their butt. I don't want to be in your position. This isn't my decision to make, but Matt and this engineer, you guys don't live here. So as long as you cover your bases and the applicant, legally meets all the requirements, it's going to be built the way it is. But the reality is it's really not a very good situation. And we can't change the railroad. We can't change the school. Everybody in the neighborhood is still going to live there. So I don't know what the solution is, but to just rubber stamp it, the developer will go on, develop other properties. People who made these decisions may or may not, have any lasting effects of it, but we live there. My daughter lives there. My mother owns a home there. And it's just like, I don't have the answer. And you guys nobody has the exact perfect answer because there isn't any perfect situation. But the way it is now, there's a reason why we've had such a turnout. Like I remember the first time when we were in front of you last year, you guys were all sort of surprised. You were like, wow, what a turnout. Like, we can't vote on this because we didn't understand. We've never had this much of an opposition. And I can't speak for the rest of the neighborhood. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm opposed to the way it is size-wise. We keep hearing, well, it's not feasible financially if it's less units. That's all that was been said. It's not feasible financially if there's less units. Well, feasible for whom? Yes, you have to make money to do a project, but if it's not feasible, maybe you shouldn't do the project. It would be more feasible if we built 500 units. You'd make, more money, but that wouldn't work either. So it's just like someone has to be the voice of reason here, and you guys are in charge, so I trust that you'll give it great thought and we can come to some sort of a reasonable compromise between all the parties. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we check online? I don't have any access right now to that. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead after who? We'll put the person who's online as on deck.
So Conrad Zeman will be next, and then we'll go online to Robert 21.
All right, my name is Conrad Zeman. I grew up in Louisville my entire life. I'm 25 years old now. I live in Golden currently, but I lived 23 of those years on Front Street. And having lived on Front Street my whole life, I got to do everything. I went to Louisville Middle School just like they did. I went to Louisville Elementary School, Monarch after, and always walked. I always walked everywhere in town. I could go downtown. That was one of the best parts of my life, actually, is when I first got to go downtown by myself on a safe street, you know. No parents, going down the sidewalk, you know. I learned to ride a bike on Front Street, and you can imagine with, I think they said it's six minutes per car currently. I don't know how that would be feasible with this. As far as, they said, you know, this is a mid to high density development, right? And my entire life, I've never thought of Louisville as mid to high density anything. You know, I've watched this town do development after development, and it's just growing and growing, and I'm not against growth. But in the way that they're doing it with these massive apartment complexes, that doesn't scream to the character and identity of these neighborhoods of this town. And it feels like, I get where this looks good on paper. You have these beautiful illustrations of this. I mean, it looks good. I'll have to say it looks good, but does it scream Louisville to me? No. I look at that, and that could be in Denver or Fort Collins, you know. I'm sure it's great there, but they have this raised sort of pedestrian walk that they're proposing. Yeah, it might discourage cars. But I know as soon as everyone finds out that they can use that, it doesn't matter how you make it look. That's going to be the path everyone takes, because Maine, especially during the school times, it's a disaster already. And I know turning onto 42 currently is already a disaster. So we just add so much more traffic through there. I mean, you know, you got the numbers and everything, and it looks good on paper, but in reality, I think it's going to be a nightmare. I mean, I just think that as far as this, what Little Italy is meant to me growing up there, it's going to change it entirely. And I don't know. Makes me sad more than anything, actually. Yeah. I guess that's. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming back to town. Next up is online.
Yeah, Robert on Zoom. Yeah,
Robert, we're trying to unmute you at this end. We may have accomplished that. You might be muted at your end. Always a possibility.
Unmute.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Robert Kulikowski. I am the managing member of the entity that owns the property located at 1030 East South Boulder Road.
And just to confirm, you're not a Louisville resident?
I was born and raised in Boulder, and I live in Boulder.
Thank you.
Also, Eric Geller is online, and I would ask the same courtesy to be extended and me to use his 3 minutes for this conversation as it is done in person. Mr. Post indicated that this is a vacant parcel, and I just want to preface this with that is unequivocally false. The PUD that's being proposed is comprised of an HOA. Now, I own a small parcel on the northwest section of this proposed PUD. It's part of the current PUD, which was the Coal Creek filing PUD number 2. I have not been party of the conversation. I really feel that the property and the ownership interest referenced by the proposed PUD and 1030 East South Boulder Road, which is this property I'm referring to and representing, is not being represented here. And so I just wanted to put that out there that It's a small square of land on the northwest corner. It is part of the current site and subject to the same POD. However, it's not being referenced in here, and I only received notification on a postcard. I'm here tonight to formally object to the proposed PUD unless and until my legal rights as a property owner are fully addressed, and respectfully request that the commission delay any decision on this application until the developer has engaged in substantive discussion with me and entered into a mutually agreed terms that protect my recorded and historic use rights. Procedurally, I'm concerned, and the notice of process. I received notice of this hearing, like I said, on Monday by a postcard. I've previously asked and included communication related to this project. I sent an email to Mr. Post, Elizabeth, and I apologize for butchering their names, Marchetti, Rob Zaccario, Jeff, as well as Ashley Stateman on March 15th of 2024, asking to be kept up, abreast of the situation and be copied on any submittal information. This email had followed over a year of no contact from the city since January of 2023. I received no reply to this email and was not aware that this proposal had moved forward. And my concerns have not been addressed. The impact on this parcel is governed by recorded covenants. And the property is entitled to access rights, parking rights, use of surrounding common areas. Despite these legal rights, the PUD proposes to allocate only 2 parkings, which is inadequate for the employee and customer use. The developer previously mentioned installing a new water tap and service lines, but no further details were provided. The site plan appears to remove sidewalks and ADA accessible routes that currently serve my property. There's no connectivity to this site. The site's new roads, walkways, or internal access ways. They're also proposing changing the access on South Boulder Road. The plan would isolate this building from the rest of the development and interfere with the future use and value. The property has historically accessed and used surrounding areas, which now appear to be removed without my consent. That being said, in the narrative of this proposal, they're mentioning Argento's Empanadas as an adjacent commercial space, which is the location of the subject property. It's also indicated on page 2, I believe, of the submittal as the little red dot on the top, on the, what would that be, the northwest corner. I'm also very concerned about title and marketability of my property. With the approval of the POD, it must clearly preserve the existing covenants and legal rights to my parcel, avoid creating title issues and uncertainty for future use and transfer, and include proper documentation in the public record to confirm that my property rights are intact. I'm just making a request for action. It appears that the developer is moving forward without my involvement, consent, or consideration of how the PUD impacts my legal rights, and I urge the commission to deny or delay this application until my concerns are resolved. Require the developer to negotiate directly with me to address access, parking, utilities, and other essential property rights, and ensure that I receive timely and complete notice of all future submittals and hearings, not just when public notices are mailed, but as an affected property owner. I want to thank you guys all for your time and considering the rights of all property owners on this parcel, and not just the majority landholder. And I'm happy to answer any questions or provide further documentation. And I did submit this electronically.
Thank you. All right, back in the room here. Next up.
Next, Linda Cadiora, and then after that, Anita Menendez.
So I'm Linda Cadiora, and I was told by the city manager to bring pictures, so to help help my case. So who do I give these to get them to you?
Did you email them in at all, or is this just the first time you've had the pictures?
I did not email them.
Okay, yeah, no, you can pass them over here, and we'll pass them down the line here. Just in general, for people, the sooner you email, the easier it is for us to get access in the future. Just the way it is. Thanks.
Okay, so my first thing is the failing intersection at Sapulpa Road and Highway 42 is one of the barriers that cannot support this development. The right turn only exits are the issue. So the proposed workaround is to route traffic into a 1-block wide old neighborhood onto a school corridor and a railroad crossing. And this workaround then becomes part of the chaos at the Louisville Middle School. So this picture shows Front Street looking north, and the workaround is an invitation to cut through the neighborhood. So I've got an arrow pointing at Sapulpa Road there, and this is Front Street, and that's where the connection is going to be with the glorified speed bump. So then this next picture that I have shows Front Street looking south. And the terminus of this cut through is Delos sitting in the middle of this gridded street. So it's not a gridded street. You can see that Front Street is actually narrowed to half its distance, effectively turning it into an alley at Griffith and Front. And this alley so any presentation of this as being gridded is false. And that alley, if you look on the next page, that alley, looking down that alley, it's showing the Delo private parking lot. Again, there's no access to Delo commercial through this. And all of those buildings with the arrows, those are residences along that alley. So where does this, the traffic study says that there's a 900% increase in traffic on this Front Street connection versus a 45% increase on Sapulpa Road U-turns. 45% versus 900%. So where does this Front Street connection routing 900% increased traffic go? If you turn the page, it's going to Louisville Middle School. So this is the view. I've got Front Street T-boning into Griffith Street. There's the railroad crossing, and there's Louisville Middle School. And that's where we're routing the cut-through traffic, 900% increase directly into the school corridor, the main street, the chaos that's there, the kids on their e-bikes, the crossing guard that may not be there, the preschool across the street. That adds chaos too. And so I just think it's irresponsible for this flawed intersection, this flawed development, to utilize a plan that doesn't make sense. You don't route traffic intentionally to the middle school and call it a safe route or a safe corridor or anything like that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, as we call, go ahead.
Okay. Anita Menendez, and then after that, Mark Zeman.
And a motion to introduce this into the public record.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Ready?
Please, thank you.
I'm Anita Menendez. I've been a Little Italy resident for 11 years, raised 2 kids here. I'm also a Louisville-based realtor right here on Main Street with RE/MAX, where I've been for a number of years. This is a bad product at a bad time. Attached units are sitting, they're not selling. In the last 2 years in Louisville, 182 condos or units went on the market. 41% never sold and withdrew from the market. HOA fees and property insurance and all those increases are pushing people toward single-family purchases. Doesn't make sense. the micro homes at $1,000 a square foot. The average price per square foot of all the other attached units in Louisville is $352, and they're not selling. So $1,000 a square foot. I don't see how anybody would think that would be a long-term, financially sound purchase. So who is going to buy them? Investors. 41% of small apartment-like units in Colorado are owned by investors. Therefore, who will live there? Transient renters with no ties to our community that will only stay here short-term until they can find something more livable on a permanent basis. Who is benefiting then from this attainable housing? That would be the investors that don't live here and the builders that sell them for $1,000 a square foot. To recap, approved for 51 homes, now there's 188. 900% increase in traffic in our neighborhood and 40-something increase in U-turns on South Boulder after dangerously veering over several lanes of traffic. It's lunacy. And despite trying to work together for a year, the builder basically submitted the same plan, albeit with some lip service in form of a speed bump, a traffic sign, and efforts to discourage traffic. But someone facing the option of quickly cutting through Little Italy versus sitting at that already failing intersection, they're going to cut through and they'll figure it out. I get it. They're a business, they're self-serving. Their own proposal states that these micro homes form an ideal transition to the existing Little Italy neighborhood. That's laughable. I have a 5-bedroom, 2,700 square foot house on an 11,000 square foot lot in the oldest neighborhood in Louisville. They have
Just to let you know your time is up, if you can wrap up. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's unacceptable, it's dangerous. We're pro-development, but we're asking you to table it until traffic and safety are really worked out and common sense is integrated in a real and meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Zeman, and then after that, Rita Zamora.
Yeah, my name's Mark Zeman. I live at 1439 Front Street, Louisville. My wife and I bought our house in 1993, and we've seen Louisville change in lots of ways, and some of it is not worked out very well. The Planning Commission, I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak. The biggest thing about this development is traffic into our little Italy. They're going to cut through. They used to cut through when it was a dirt lot until signs were put up. No traffic. This is not an access. They will cut through. I can understand the city wanting the connection, and you know the developer basically has said we don't need it, but the city says yeah we have to have it. And the only thing I can see having that connection for is a fire truck, an ambulance, a police car, or city maintenance trucks. I don't see why you have to run all that traffic through an established historical neighborhood and just to have it. That connection will dead into, as my wife pointed out, into nowhere land, and it's going to put it into the schools. Now, the whole statement about well, we can't have people doing U-turns. You don't have to do U-turns. Even if all 3 access points are right out, you can go out, make a right on the South Boulder Road, make a right on the 42, and if you have to, which is not a great idea, you can approach Griffith off of 42 with a right-hand turn. You do not have to run all that stuff through the middle of an old neighborhood. It's you know, it's not true that we need to have this connection. And if that connection with that raised walk was to be put in, I would propose that you put in a gate that only fire, the city, or police can use. You can still get ride bikes through there. You can still walk through there. The people could walk to the school. They could walk downtown, but it's not a necessary thing. And the right-hand turn thing, it does put traffic up on Griffith Street, but you're wanting to put traffic on the Griffith Street, which is a right-hand turn at Front Street, which is a blind turn as it sits if you park cars on Griffith. It's just dangerous. I think it's irresponsible, and I think that we need more time to look at this. More solutions, more rhetoric has to happen. And I think the builder has actually tried to do this with us. The city has not. And for them to say this must happen is false. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rita Zamora, and then Jody Ash after that.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you all for being here. My name's Rita Zamora. I live on Griffith Street at Griffith and Cannon. I have lived there since 2016, since the D-Lo townhomes were built. I'm concerned that the developer is saying they've met with the neighbors multiple times and they're very familiar with our area, yet they come up and refer to our neighborhood as Dello. So it's D-Lo, just so you know. I have had my own business for 15 years and worked remote for 10 years, so I am home 24/7. I have a little dog, and she has to go outside to go potty, so I am outside at the corner of Griffith and Cannon and all around the block through the D-Lo apartments and by the middle school like 4 or 5 times a day. So I can tell you I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. I'm asking that you respectfully deny this new proposal due to safety. And in 2019, I emailed the city of Louisville because we do have this incredible multi-generational neighborhood. That's what I love about Little Italy and D-Lo. We have elderly people that I observed walking with their walkers crossing the street from Cannon on Front and Cannon and Griffith. And I've also, I should say, Griffith and Cannon and Front and Griffith. And I was concerned. We also have seniors that have had surgery. They're hobbling across the street. We have young families with strollers, people with dogs. So I asked for a crosswalk there. And in 2020, the city implemented the Yield to Pedestrians state yellow sign. I did email you a digital copy so you could see what I'm talking about. That was implemented in 2020 because it was unsafe due to speeding and the volume of cars and the narrow streets that are in the Little Italy and D-Lo neighborhoods. And so over the course of the next few years, that sign had to be replaced at least a half a dozen times, 5 or 6 times, because it was not struck once or twice. Every time someone hit that sign, bam, it sounded like a gunshot. So throughout the day, it wasn't just at night, it was in the morning, it's at lunch, it's in the evening. And certainly when you're sleeping, this pedestrian sign, which is where they're gonna put the raised lot or the raised crosswalk over at Front and Griffith, it's not going to happen because we can't even have this thin crosswalk sign without it getting decimated. And it was not hit once or twice. They were hit multiple times. So I hope you'll look at that picture. Also, I want to tell you about the calming measures. In front of D-Lo apartments, we've had the calming measures, the curved streets, the slanted sidewalks. It does not slow the traffic. I walked my dog there just last week. A neighbor came running out of his apartment, and it was like a 6-foot-tall man, and he's like, I swear to God, if these cars don't calm down, someone's going to be really sad that they didn't listen to me, and they're going to be sorry. So please, I'm not against development. I want it to be safe and responsible, but please consider our beautiful neighborhood, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. As a side note for procedure this evening, I should let you guys know we have a longstanding informal policy of not taking on new issues after 9 p.m. So it seems that you all could be released if because we're not going to have time to get to that. So our second item on the agenda this evening. Thanks. All right, next up.
That'll be Jody Ash, and then after that, Ash Colby.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you for your service.
My name is Jody Ash. I am a Front Street resident, and I own my home. I've lived there since 2017 and have been a Louisville resident for 20 years. I used to live on the other Front Street, and it was too busy. And it's one of the reasons that I came to Little Italy, is that it's quiet. It's not a thoroughfare. It's not the busy downtown. It's this little tucked away neighborhood that is so special. I mean, all of my neighbors, we're all friends. You know, we literally have a community of people that have lived there for a long time. And I wish that you could feel, you know, the specialness of it. And with that, and I did want to just mention that the development is beautiful that they're recommending. And I do really appreciate the efforts that the developers have made to offer the win-win-win. You know, and I think that I wanted to make sure I said that. Everyone has had, you know, really important things to say, and I feel like I'm just kind of reiterating, but I think it's important. LMS is a nightmare in the mornings at drop-off. It is a nightmare in the afternoons at pickup. Patchwork is included in that, right? There's just so much traffic. You can't even, you know, you can wait 5 to 8 minutes literally to make a turn. And if you're turning, so obviously I live on Front Street. I love my street, and I don't want there to be more traffic there. It would change our neighborhood so drastically, but the real important thing is the safety. You know, I understand we're talking about the traffic studies and the safety of crossing over to try to make U-turns, but it's equally as important to really understand what happens in the mornings during rush hour, during the highest traffic times, what's going on at LMS. Like, we're going to be backed up through our neighborhood, down Griffith, and it just isn't going to work. And, you know, another thing that really struck me is about the traffic impacts that are already an issue. We already have a problem, right? And we're not solving that problem first before we add all these other cars. And so we're compounding an already problematic issue. And really, it's absurd, honestly. And also, you know, one of the things about Front Street, I don't know if you've ever been down the North Front Street. There's a lot of.
All right, your time looks like it's also.
Thank you.
But you can wrap up.
Okay, thank
Give
you.
a little bit, yeah.
So I've heard comments that dealing with the city is like shouting down into an empty well. Please hear us. You know, we're the citizens that have been here, that will be here, that we've settled here, and keep our wonderful historic neighborhood quiet, peaceful, and safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ash Colby, and then after that, Caitlin Sagrillo.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ash Colby. I live on Front Street in the Little Italy neighborhood. And I'm not opposed to the idea of this development. I think the pictures look quite nice, actually. Be a nice place to walk around. My main concerns come with the traffic, as well as them saying that they want it to be pedestrian-like centric. They want it to be safe for pedestrians, and yet they are making the sidewalks skinnier and also increasing traffic, which from my experience does not make walking safer, makes it scarier. Also, the issue with middle school traffic, as well as traffic turning out onto Highway 42 from Griffith and from Harper. I frequently get stuck in long lines of traffic. It's pretty annoying. I mean, as Jody said, there will be wait times. Sometimes I'll wait at the stop sign turning onto Main Street for 5 to 10 minutes in the mornings when I'm going, well, especially when I was going to school, but now when I'm going to work and stuff. But also, I'm concerned about the flow of traffic coming down Front Street if it is connected to South Boulder Road. Me and multiple of the other residents of Little Italy work on projects in front of their houses. We walk our dogs. Many of us have cats that are indoor, outdoor, just outdoor, and walk through our neighborhood. And if there is the increase in traffic, which I believe is 900%, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm concerned that with that many cars, the safety of our animals, as well as the wildlife, like the coyotes, the bunnies, stuff like that, it's just not going to work. Also, I forget what they called it, I think pocket park idea to me just doesn't really seem, when I hear the words pocket park, it does not sound like a nice place I want to go hang out. It seems like a little, it seems like a get around to please people. So I don't know, it's just all the words that are being used, the impacts of the traffic, it just doesn't work for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caitlin Segrillo, and then Joan Doolittle after that.
And third on deck will be somebody online, apparently, yeah.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Segrillo. I'm at 1435 Front Street. I've lived in Louisville my entire life. I briefly moved to Arizona for college, but I came back for a reason. I attended Fireside Elementary School, Louisville Middle School, and Monarch High School. I walked to school pretty much every single day on these streets. I love this town and everything that it has to offer, and I want to see it continue to develop, but it needs to be in a viable and safe way and in a way that it'll keep Louisville's character. I drive down South Boulder Road every single day for work. Adding upwards of 300 people in such a tight spot will make rush hour even more of a mess. We already know that this is an issue. Also, the gridlock that happened during the Marshall Fire was an absolute nightmare. Adding more people to this area where there's already been issues is just going to make it even more of a mess. The road's infrastructure cannot handle this. The plan that forces Front Street to be a through street is extremely disruptive and causes real safety hazards, not only to the people in Little Italy, but to the middle schoolers who walk to school every single day. Not to add the e-bikes that are constantly ridden through these streets. E-bikes are going to continue to get more and more popular. Accidents have already happened in this exact area around the middle school. Adding more cars through these streets is not going to help that. The traffic study claims that volumes stay under 1,000 vehicles per day, and with the calming measures of this raised crosswalk that discourages cars from going through the through street on Front Street, really is not going to work. I know if I were driving through there, I would just drive through it every single day. Once people in the new development know about it and people in Little Italy know about it, they're just going to use it every day. So it's really not going to solve any issues. Finally, the density and the design feels wrong for Louisville. You're marketing some of these affordable places or attainable places for $1,000 per square foot, which is over double of what the average home in Louisville costs. As a young person dreaming of owning a home here in Louisville, I currently fall into their target demographic to afford these affordable homes that they're trying to build. However, the people like me who they're saying are going to buy them aren't going to be the ones investing in these properties because it's truly not a great investment, especially for someone who has a family who's invested in multiple properties in and around Boulder County. I want thoughtful growth for Louisville, not this rush of density that prioritizes quantity over quality. I want growth that matches Louisville's heart and their character. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan Doolittle.
Is that Joan or John? What was that?
I'm sorry, Joan Doolittle.
Not here anymore.
Okay.
All right,
then
thank
we'll
you.
Go to
Online.
Mark G. online.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
thank you very, very much for taking my call. Yes, I live at 1014 Johnson Lane in the Delo Townhomes. We've been there now 7 years. And I just really we've talked all about the traffic, and I just want to make sure that from a common sense, that people don't drive that area regularly, truly understand this is very factual. So again, people that want to go towards Boulder, coming out of that new development, are going to have to come through the new roads, and making it more narrow and raised is only going to create more problems. As they're trying to get out, you're going to have people coming in. They go right past the middle school, which I've already said is just horrendous in traffic. But the bigger issue to me, being in the townhomes, is coming home in the evening. Anybody coming in from Broomfield or the toll road out there, anyone coming that way on 42, the only way they're going to be able to get into the new development is to go north on 42, take a left at the light at Short Road, go through the Delo apartment complex parking lot, go through our alleyways in Delo townhomes to feed into the new Front Street connection to go in those homes. There's no other way for somebody coming from Broomfield to get into that new complex in the evening rush hour. You cannot go up to South Boulder and take a left, because then you can't take a left into the new subdivision. You can't turn anywhere else on Highway 42 other than that red light, because finally you get a green arrow that's going to drive every single one of those cars automatically to go through the parking lot of the Delo apartment complex, where you have tons of people walking, and go right through our alleyways in Delo townhomes, which, oh, by the way, is a privately maintained road that we maintain, and a very narrow road. So I beg you to please think about the consequences of this vote that you're going to do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Just a rough sense, how many cards do you have remaining? Yeah. Okay, great. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Everybody can refresh so we can all pay attention, and we'll reconvene. Thank you. Perfect, thanks. Thank you all. Okay, if we can continue with public comment at this point. Thank you.
Can we have Jean Morgan next, please?
My name is Jean Morgan. I've lived in Miners Field neighborhood for 55 years and know that my neighborhood and Little Italy are two of the original Louisville neighborhoods. And I think it's wrong to channel traffic from this development into one of the original Louisville neighborhoods. The impact on Front Street would be horrific. Imagine yourself owning a home there with all the traffic which would be funneled there from the new development. I'm sorry that there's no direct westbound traffic out of this development, but the impact on our historic neighborhood is not the answer. Please listen to those who would be impacted and put yourself in their shoes. It is a historic neighborhood, not an exit for a huge development where residents are trying to avoid South Boulder Road and Highway 42. The development's traffic must go north to South Boulder Road or east to Highway 42 to access Griffith in order to go west. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Can we have Cammie Donnelly next, please?
So is that anybody who's still here? Was it-
Cammie Donnelly?
No.
No? Okay. Cindy Bedell?
Hi, my name is Cindy Bedell. I live in Ward 2, Louisville. So I just have a couple things I'd like to say. One, this development needs more public land dedication. A 15% public land dedication for 10.7 acres would require at least 1.6 acres. This proposal only suggests a 20,908 square foot park, which is, I think, about half an acre, and a smaller 2,350 square foot pocket park. You should require this based on current public land dedication standards. It's not an appropriate interpretation to say that this parcel should be exempt from LMC 16.16.060 because the land was platted in 1890. At that time, were there any public land dedication standards in 1890? Probably not. It seems past city councils anticipated public land dedication would be included at the time this parcel reached current platting. So please require public land dedication of at least 1.6 acres, preferably more, in consideration of a development of this density and size. Secondly, looking at the architectural projections, these three-story modern industrial looking, some of them are matte black, looks like office buildings with strange new weird roof designs. They don't fit in with surrounding Little Italy neighborhood. And so if this is built, I think it should be consistent with historic small-town Louisville, with the architecture, with the design, with the mass and the scale. And one easy way to do that is, for example, to put on a gable roof. It could be that simple. Two-story would be much more consistent with neighborhood character rather than 3 stories. So that's all the time I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andre Armijo?
And next up after him.
Hello, my name is Andre Armijo, and I live at 1401 Cannon Street, Unit B, with a beautiful Japanese garden. I moved here about 20 years ago and bought my house when I was 21, and it was the most quiet, calming, peaceful neighborhood that you can't even describe right now. I grew up in South Boulder, and I got sick of Boulder. because of all the gentrification. I love Louisville. I don't want to disrespect Louisville right now, but it's kind of becoming like Boulder in that way. And, you know, all the new growth is good for business. I understand. But honestly, the speeding on Griffith is horrible. Some cars go like 50, 60 miles an hour down our street. It's very unsafe. And we need to deal with the problems, the real problems, before we get more problems, like the speeding on Griffith, the horrendous traffic during the school times, and it's very unsafe. And yeah, that's basically the way I feel. Like when I first moved here, it was so peaceful and quiet. Like most of the businesses closed at like 9 o'clock. And back then I was 21. I was just a kid, you know, a punk. And I got to the point where this is very nice. You know, like I could see the stars. The night sky now is so much more lighter now. And that has to do with Denver and Boulder too, you know, but honestly, it was very peaceful. Like you could just walk outside and hardly any cars would drive by Griffith Street. And you walk down Main Street and it was just very, very peaceful, family, you know. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Little Italy. I just loved the neighborhood. It was so quiet, peaceful. And I grew up in Boulder all my life when I was a kid. And I was like, I got to get out of here. Every time I went to Louisville, it felt like I was going to another country because it was so different. It wasn't like going to Fort Collins. It wasn't going like to Denver. It was just so nice. And I'll keep it real quick, but every 5 years, I could just see the growth just getting worse and worse every 5 years since I've been here in the last 20 years. And I love this. I love this neighborhood. I love Louisville. I think I'm going to live here till I die. And I really hope that the street from Front Street
time is up. If we can ask you to wrap it
to Griffith Street does not, because it will be a disaster. And thank you for letting me speak. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael McClure, and then after that, Jet Sandoval.
Hello, my name is Michael McClure. Yes?
Yep. Okay.
My name is Michael McClure, and I live on Griffith Street here in Louisville, Colorado. Yes. This has been an interesting, I don't envy your position. This is clearly, and you know, the developer is, clearly they're trying. I mean, I understand. I wanted to speak briefly. You've heard about traffic. The calming measures. I also heard that whap and bang every time they hit the little sign that they put in the middle of the street in the crosswalk. And I picked it up a couple of times, all broken and stuff, and wondered what it did to people's cars. But yeah, calming measures, I'm not so sure how much effect that's going to have. It didn't really seem to have a lot of effect the last time we tried it. In fact, I believe the city just abandoned and just took the thing out because they were tired of replacing it. So traffic, you're in a tough spot here, and so are we. I live in a place, I'm kind of boxed in. Railroad to the west, 42 to the east, South Boulder Road on top. It's just a natural, the neighborhood is just naturally boxed in. And then we have LMS on one end of the street. I mean, you've heard about it. That's just the reality of this the way this piece of land is, and maybe that's part of why it didn't get developed until now. It's one of the last places that's in close because the access is so difficult. I mean, I imagine that's part of this. It's been fun watching the e-bikes and the e-bike arguments going on among the parents and LMS picking up. The other part that when I grew up, people didn't walk to get Ziggy's and coffee and then walk to middle school with a coffee in their hand and cross the streets to go to 6th grade. I'm kind of surprised at that all the time when I see it. But what I'd like to say is maybe there's a reason we're here. Maybe there's a reason. I mean, we're boxed in. We've got a middle school there. We've got traffic problems. Maybe this piece of land is just not set up to support the density that we're talking about. Going from 50 to 180 or whatever it is, I mean, maybe this just can't support that kind of density with the traffic and with the neighborhood there. I do oppose cutting the access through to Griffith. I do admire the measure that they made, though, with the bump and everything. But maybe there's a reason why we're here, and it maybe a combination of more public land dedication, lowering the density, figuring out something to do with the traffic is what we have to do. But we kind of are where we are, and this might be one of these places where we just have to make some compromises on a few things in order to get something through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Jet Sandoval pooling time with Joyce Golio, and then we have one online next.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Hello, my name is Joyce Golio. I live at 1092 Harper, and I'm ceding my 3 minutes to Jet Sandoval.
Thank you.
Sorry, can you restart the clock? I'm going to need every second. Thanks. Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Jet Sandoval, and I'm a proud new homeowner in the historic Little Italy neighborhood, living right on Front and Griffith Street, a contentious corner in this proposal. But more important to me is that I serve the community every day as a local school social worker. So I come before you not just as a homeowner, but a professional who deals firsthand with the tragic consequences of the Boulder County housing crisis. Every day I support families going through housing insecurity under the economic toll this crisis takes on families and public sector professionals alike who educate and support them. While we welcome thoughtful growth, this specific Coal Creek Village plan is not responsible development in my eyes. It's an act of maximizing density to make profit gains. It's not for the public good, and it sets a terrible precedent for prioritizing gains over our regional needs, which is genuinely subsidized or affordable housing. So this project dramatically increases the unit count from the old 51 to 188 units. Yet the applicants claim that no reduction of units can happen with their current proposal to enable a financially viable project. So if the original proposal was only 51 units, what changed besides the financial expectations of the developers? The jump from 51 to 188 units is not a necessity. It is a clear choice fueled by the need for private gains. Density sure has to be leveraged for community benefit, okay, but density uprise is not the same as making homes affordable. So getting into the numbers, 60 townhomes, 96 apartments, 32 so-called micro homes, which would be 300 to 400 square feet. This is Louisville, Colorado, not Manhattan, New York. We would like to keep it that way. I don't think that 300 to 400 square feet is enough for the multi-generational housing needs that our community members demand. The critical fact here is the price. It would be up to $1,000 per square foot with the 300 to 400 square feet micro homes. That doesn't make it affordable to teachers, aides, essential workers, food service, and health industry members. We have surrounding hospitals. I'm sure this could be a place that could help those people, but a lot of them, most of them would not be able to afford to live in a place like this. Louisville Municipal Code requires mandatory 15% public land dedication. On this 10.7 acre site, there's only 1.6, which would mean 1.6 acres of land. These guys have 23,000 square feet of total park space. That is 33% of what is required. Calling it a pocket park. It doesn't sound very welcoming or expansive and inviting to be outside. It just kind of sounds like an afterthought. We, as a neighborhood, have proposed multiple times to the developers a 1.25 acre land dedication to settle the land between our communities to help make us neighbors. We want to welcome in neighbors. It's just going to be so hard when all these constant problems with safety and our needs being ignored. It's going to build resentment. And on top of that, there's already resentment, as you can see. Leaning on a century-old code that says we don't have to have the 15% land dedication is undermining the mandatory public rights that we're asking for land to be dedicated to enable people in the community to enjoy the space and to help our environment as the future looms over us with climate change. Lastly, safety. This is the most horrific concern here. Very recently, a elementary school student was struck while crossing South Boulder Road to get to Main Street. They were on their bicycle. They were struck by a vehicle. These problems already exist. They can be fatal. This only will make things worse. It's already a failing intersection, as the developers have acknowledged. It will be failing whether this is developed or not. It will be a failing intersection whether this land is developed for this proposal or not. This is a Band-Aid that is going to fall off and create a new scab that oozes more and more. It is irresponsible to put this plan into place when we don't have Highway 42 or Courtesy Road figured out yet. It's sort of funny it's called Courtesy Road because I think a lot of decisions would be made that don't seem so courteous in regards to trying to help current residents. I commute through this area. I already have to, instead of going east on Griffith to then turn left and go north on 42, which is impossible in the morning, I have to go around past Louisville Middle, turn right onto Main Street, and then turn right onto South Boulder Road. And it takes me 2 stoplights to turn left going north onto 96. That's gonna be worse too. It's not a lot of room to make these things possible. Also, I don't think you've heard today, but the infrastructure and drainage is a real problem. You may not know this, but it's a seasonal wetland right there, and the Little Italy sewer lines are only 10 inches and already experience flood issues. So that, paired with the lack of developers even mentioning that there's a railroad there, huge safety concerns from me and my fellow neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Sanam Pejuhush online.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Sanam Pejuhush, and I live on Cannon Street between Harper and Griffith in Little Italy. And I am a parent and a neighbor who just really cares about the safety of our kids. I'm also a child therapist and have my office right on Main Street, on East Main Street, across the street from the middle school. So I'm very familiar with the issues and the traffic and the problems that we're having and the safety of our kids that's already jeopardized with the way traffic flows in this little section of Louisville. Our neighborhood, Little Italy, is a quiet, historic neighborhood. We have families who have lived here for decades, sometimes for generations in a number of our families. We have kids playing out in the streets, riding their scooters, playing soccer in the streets, riding their bikes around. And we also have the middle school, where children are zipping around on these e-bikes, already a huge amount of congestion. As Jet mentioned, I wanted to speak to as well the child that was hit just on the corner of the two main roads, adding a tremendous amount of traffic and a disruptive flow to this area is going to create a huge safety risk for primarily for our children as they're moving, walking, riding their bikes and their e-bikes through these neighborhoods. So I personally, as a parent, I'm a single parent. I moved to this neighborhood because it is quiet, it is safe, it's a peaceful place to raise my child and for other families to raise their children. And it's not that I am anti-growth or want to stifle responsible development. Of course, our community needs development, we need growth, but it has to be growth that respects the families and the neighborhoods that already exist here, that don't impose safety issues and create issues that are going to be irreversible once it's done. And I'm particularly concerned about that Front Street connector bringing that much more traffic into a neighborhood that is not designed for it, is really concerning. So I'm just asking myself as a citizen that you consider, and the developers and planners consider, just protecting the integrity and the safety of the Little Italy neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods as we kind of navigate this issue. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Laurel Daniff, pooling time with Jose Rodriguez.
Is Jose here, or?
No, they left, but can I use Jack Zagrillo's time instead?
If he agrees, yes. Yeah, all right.
I'm Laurel Daniff Sagrillo. I live at 1435 Front Street, neighbors with all these humans. I want to say thank you for the important work that you're doing. I also want to say thanks to the Markel Company. You guys have been great in working with us and staying in contact. I also want to mention that I sent in a petition earlier today. It should be in your packet. Last year we had 80 signatures on a petition. This year we got 222 as of this afternoon, maybe more now. I just want to mention that the support for responsible development has really grown as this project has continued to be on the table. You know, I don't want to repeat too much stuff. I don't want to repeat last year. You guys were here when we spoke last year. We're a passionate neighborhood, but you know, the traffic study did show. It's funny. It feels like it can be skewed either way. To us, it showed what we feared, that all of the intersections around us and the proposed site are stressed already. That sending cars down Front Street, you know, you heard the 900% number, you heard the from 6 or 7 minutes to less than a minute numbers. And it hasn't changed that it's going to send stuff towards the middle school. It's going to send stuff towards D-Lo. It's going to send stuff towards the stressed 42 intersection. None of that is appropriate or safe or helpful. And we also learned that the reality is opening Front Street doesn't help any of those intersections. The South Boulder Road and 42, that's an F, will still be an F, according to the traffic study, even with Front Street coming through. So the city's asking this historic neighborhood that's quiet and peaceful to bear a burden that has no like public help. There's no public benefit to justify it. Markel say they don't need it. It's the city that has been pushing it through. The safety risks on South Boulder Road are indicative of deficient infrastructure, not of a reason to open other roads onto other streets. It doesn't help. I have this thing. People keep saying the grid, right? Everybody, the cities reference the grid. The developers reference the grid. I sent in my email earlier, a map that shows the grid section of downtown is what they're trying to ask us to tie into. But the proposed development site in Little Italy is surrounded by the railroads on the west side with 3 entrances or crossovers on South Boulder Road, Griffith Street, and Pine Street. So there is no possible way to tie in, for one thing, to the grid. For the other thing, the middle school disrupts the grid up here. To the north, there's the Christopher Village, the apartments, Steel Ranch, which none of that's in a grid. Steel Ranch also has 2 right in and right outs, and they make that work just fine. Just side note. King Soopers, Balfour, not in a grid. Across 42 is open space, 7th generation farm, ball fields, recycling stuff. None of that's in a grid. None of it's gonna be in a grid. Delo to the south is off the grid. It is literally offset from Front Street. So there's no grid. Like the longest grid that's possible, the longest street is Cannon, which dead ends at Short Street and dead ends 3 blocks later at Harper and can never go through because there's houses there. This rhetoric that there's a grid that we're tying into, the development that was being proposed isn't even really very gridded. Like, I feel messed with by the city. There is no grid. Also, when Diana Langley asked the city, could a Front Street go circuitously through, they said, well, we need a grid system, but their first response in the sentence was, this would require a significant redesign of the subdivision and development plan. What is the problem with that? This design has not been approved. We've continuously sort of felt like the city is not working for us. The city and the developer are working together. What's wrong with asking the development to redesign so it works for the citizens? There are, oh God, I have so much stuff to say, you guys. I'm concerned about the infrastructure. Several people have mentioned the concept that maybe this site doesn't work. The safety issue around emergency evacuation is very real, and this is not speculation. We have evidence of a couple of years ago when downtown had to evacuate right into this area, and South Boulder Road blocked up past Via Appia, and Highway 42 backed up all the way down south past town. Had the fire come through downtown, that would have been a tragedy. And we're talking about this very constrained location with railroads to the west, 42 to the east. It's not changing, you guys. We can't add more. The safety issue is so great. Beyond that, we haven't been heard about
And that's your time, actually, so if you can.
Okay, there's so many unanswered questions, including land plats, including where's the piece of land that was a railroad spur? Is that being given to the developer? Anyways, please hear us. This is not ready to go through. It is not ready to be approved, and thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lauren Foster pooling time with Daniel Alejandre.
And Daniel is here, or?
Daniel's online.
Yeah, okay, great.
All right. Is there a timer that'll go? Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention last year and again tonight to this critical planning meeting. I'll introduce myself again. My name's Lauren Foster. I'm a resident of Little Italy. I live there with my wife and 2 children. I am an engineer with a PhD from the Colorado School of Mines. And my job every day is to build and use numerical and statistical models to better understand complex risks and challenges. I only share that with you today because I think it is relevant to my understanding of the proposal before you. Since I work in statistics, I know that the way numbers are presented is very critical to how we understand a problem. And I want to discuss a few of the results of the recent traffic study. There's a discrepancy in how these results have been presented to you. Some numbers are shown as a percent change, while others have been shown as a magnitude increase if you're reading the results. So, for example, the increase in weave maneuvers in the results of the traffic study is consistently presented as a 45% increase, while the increase on traffic for Little Italy is presented as a 9.3x multiplicative factor. Nowhere in the traffic study are these put in apples to apples, and I know my fellow residents have been mentioning them in apples to apples, but let's just start by saying that a 45% increase in weave maneuvers on South Boulder Road should be compared to a 930% increase in traffic on a single block, which, as you've heard, is currently used primarily by bikes and pedestrians, especially downtown access and middle school students. Or let's compare them both as multipliers. A 9.3x increase in traffic on Little Italy would be comparable to a 0.45x change in weave maneuvers on South Boulder Road. So with those numbers in mind, I want to discuss the concerns that the city hopes to alleviate with this Front Street connection and why the traffic study did a comparison of with and without the connection. So number one, we have a major failing intersection at South Boulder Road and 42. Does the connection change the failing statistics? You saw the big table, which had Front Street on the left and Front Street connected on the left and Front Street not connected on the right, and then the colors across, which show the rankings of those intersections. Not a single intersection studied changes its ranking as a result of including or not including the Front Street connection. Does it solve the westbound, northbound access problems for the future residents of the Coal Creek Village? They can not go west or north out of their neighborhood. No, it doesn't actually. What it does is adds another southbound exit. It doesn't add a westbound exit. It doesn't add a northbound exit. Asking those residents to use a planned exit would increase their drive distance by 500 yards. Because it only has to avoid a single block. I measured it on a map. So what we're saying is let's route 930% more cars down one block of our historic neighborhood because we don't want those cars to drive an extra 500 yards on the roads that were designed to handle larger traffic, Griffith and Highway 42. Additionally, the Steel Ranch development across the street also does not have access to the east or the north, two of the four cardinal directions, and it also only has 2 in and out access points. And so that's the same as Coal Creek would be if it was proposed without the Front Street connection. It's a little confusing that Steel Ranch went through and Coal Creek cannot. So then let's talk, I'll be brief here because I know Laurel just covered this really well, but yes, the thing that the traffic study says over and over again is the reason we have to have the connection, and there's this 45% increase in weave maneuvers, number one, and number two, a gridded network is in the multi-use design standards and it creates redundancy and safer access for pedestrians and bikes. And those things are all true. They are absolutely true if you have a grid. If you read the 740-page traffic study, it uses the same paragraph of results 4 separate times, and those are the only 2 reasons that it advocates for this Front Street connection. And this is not a grid, right? If you look at PUD is planned, is not gridded. Look at the PUD for the new development. Coal Creek is not gridded. Delo on the other side is not gridded. Little Italy is a 1.5 city block neighborhood between 42 Griffith and railroad tracks. It is not a grid. So there are no grids. We are not discussing grids. It is unreasonable to use that as the justification for a 930% increase in traffic on a road used primarily by middle school students, especially when you present those numbers in totally different apples to oranges ways to the public. I'd like to address some of the things Cameron shared tonight about a few other reasons that weren't in the traffic study that he was advocating for why the connection is helpful. He said tonight, again, the gridded network thing, that's only true when you have at least 3 full grids. Otherwise, the emergency access, right, which you mentioned, Cameron, as being improved by gridded networks, is actually reduced by having this connection open, because if you have emergency access only and there's less traffic on Front Street, then you have a way for emergency vehicles to very quickly access the new development and access the Little Italy neighborhood. So you're actually increasing access for emergency vehicles by closing that connection. He mentioned that the connection would increase pedestrian safety on South Boulder Road, again referencing the weave maneuvers, but there was no acknowledgement of the impact on pedestrian and bikers on the 930% increase on Front Street. And so I don't think those were compared apples to apples for your benefit either. I'll just close by saying that we have been advised by the city planners that if the preliminary PUD is approved tonight by you, then the Front Street connection would be almost impossible to change at later stages of this planning process. And so I really urge you to walk the 5-house length of Front Street, look at the numbers in the traffic study, and ask yourselves whether asking cars to drive an extra 500 yards is worth disrupting the historic neighborhood, the students, and all the other reasons that residents have said tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That's a wrap then. All right. Seeing no additional members at this point who wanted to speak out. We're at a turning point here ourselves, 9:35 p.m. I think it's unfortunate. Obviously, a lot of people have had to go home for any number of good reasons. I'll kind of poll the commission to see what thoughts are at this point, whether we continue through.
I'm good to keep it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm okay with
Yeah, okay, all right, thanks. With that then, I would invite the applicant up for a response and closing statement, please.
Yeah, I'm Jason Markel, reside in Boulder, and I represent Markel Homes. And yeah, wanted to hear and answer any questions you might have before closing statements.
Great, thanks. And if we do have questions for him at this time, or the applicant team, it is wide open for us.
I've only got one question. A business owner, Snarfs in particular, expressed concern about business access. Do you have any comment on their concerns?
Yeah, we worked with them. Matt went over some of the considerations that we put in place. I think it was a matter of, turning access from Cannon, but we've moved the curb cut so that it allowed full access, like they have currently.
Actually, I believe that is one of the conditions, right?
That's correct, yeah. It will be a condition.
Any other thoughts on the additional conditions? As staff has proposed the conditions?
Yeah, we've, like you heard from a lot of the residents, we've worked really hard to try and, get that win-win-win. And so, the private drive and, that, chops the two right-of-ways so that, the apps can't funnel cut-through traffic. I really do think that when you look at those numbers and you look at, that 2/3 of that traffic was coming from that cut-through traffic, that is going to, heavily mitigate, the concerns. And I just want to point out that the traffic reports that you were seeing with and without Front Street did not factor in that new, revelation that we came up with and the new, change in plan. So when you looked at those numbers that, Sam presented, that would be cutting down those counts that were in the official traffic report, because we worked with the neighbors and we came up with that idea, pretty recently. And so, I think staff was trying to, facilitate a good idea that, I think everybody realized would be, beneficial for everybody. And so, those counts that you're hearing and, some of those percentages, those are coming way down because, 2/3 of that was coming from cut-through traffic. So I feel like, that is the win-win-win, is that, everyone's concerns, while incredibly valid and why we're working with them and we're completely sympathetic with all that, we are trying to bring those numbers down substantially with the 2/3 reduction in the cut-through traffic. And, I was talking with my traffic engineer, and not only is it just eliminating the cut-through traffic because of, Waze and Google Maps, but when people look down and they're stopped and they're, thinking about taking a right into the neighborhood off of South Boulder Road, and there's sort of a chicane movement and it's not a clear cut path, and they see a lot of landscaping and it's not a inviting direct route. I feel like it'll eliminate further cut through traffic, not just from apps, but from people who know that taking a right and a right, like UPS and FedEx know, is faster than trying to navigate through a smaller residential neighborhood.
There's no questions?
I've got one. Do you care to comment on the landowner that sounds like they're surrounded by your land in the northwest corner?
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that because, we definitely have been in talks with him for the last, 3-4 years. And so, basically, we have a HOA and we have a document, that we are to provide, 2 parking spaces and access. And we have gone so far above and beyond. And, we've presented 4 different plans with him. And, we've probably met with him, 4 times face to face and had a lot of emails and a lot of touch points. And at this point, I think Elizabeth was here before Matt, and she was working on this with us. And Matt is very privy to the situation as well. But, we have presented, more deeded land, landscaping, everything to increase the visibility and increase the success of his, business or his tenants. And we've guaranteed access. We have a sidewalk going from the parking lot that has his dedicated spots to his, establishment. And we have another sidewalk that's on South Boulder Road that connects to it as well. So he has, 2 access points. He has multiple parking spots. These plans, every time we meet, it seems like the goalposts are moving. And, to be honest, it's starting to feel a little bit, like a shakedown because, it's gotten to the point of, guaranteeing him 2 residential units and, a whole new building and all this stuff. And so it's kind of ridiculous to state that we haven't been in touch with him because we've been, very, bending over backwards to try and accommodate him and make sure that, his business is a success.
By all reports, you've been successful in building neighborhoods people like in North End, particularly with the single-family homes. Why not that here?
I think when we looked at, the, sub-area plan and, we look at the density that Matt touched on it, there's a minimum density here that needs to be met. And when we look at the housing crisis and we look at the unaffordability of, Boulder County and Louisville, we see it firsthand because we have a lot of people who call our sales offices and they're saying, hey, we want to move into North End. And, we have to say, hey, all of our, our single families might be out of your price point, but some of our condos, might be in your price point. But we've taken it a step further and we wanted to guarantee attainability. And so that's why we have the micro houses, in the micro towns. And then we have, the multifam, the townhouses, and we have townhouses in multiple configurations to attend to, a larger segment of the, economic population. So we have 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, we have affordables, we have the micros, so those are, if you think about it in a multifamily setting, we have, studios, we have 1 bedrooms, we have 2 bedrooms, we have 3 bedrooms, and we have, affordable units as well. So deed restricted on-site built affordable units. So we're trying to, hit this product segment that, we've identified as sort of the missing, link here in Boulder County and Louisville. So, we firmly believe that, if you get units, smaller, it naturally gets more affordable. And so that's what we're trying to attend to.
Thank you.
It'd be really easy to do, 50 single-family homes or, whatever, met that, but it's not meeting, the city's guidelines and, the city's sort of wanting this, like when we look at, the new housing plan and the housing shortages, this is attending to all of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Hunt, I don't see it doesn't look like you have a hand raised.
No.
Okay, great, thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant?
I guess it's a traffic question. And I don't know who's qualified to answer. A lot of the concern has been about what's been described as cut-through traffic, as opposed to traffic from the actual residents in the development. I'm guessing the traffic study didn't distinguish between potential cut-through. Not that I read.
Oh yeah, it definitely distinguishes between the two. We do have that nice chart that looks at the traffic coming emanating from the yeah, we can pull it up here. But yeah, you can. Oh, I don't know if it's there. We go. Okay, so we highlighted the diverted traffic just because that's what we were mitigating with our private drive concept. But if you look at some of the, residential traffic and the retail traffic, those are, found within our subdivision. So, the yellow and the dark green. So that's my understanding is that's, our subdivision's, contribution. But then, the other slice of the pie, which is over 60%, would be, some of the other ancillary, traffic coming from, what's there today, like what's there already on front, and what's coming through as cut through.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? No? All right, then. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your guys' time. I appreciate you staying late and hearing everybody and hearing us, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for hearing everybody.
Staff response and closing statement.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody's comments tonight, and I don't believe we have any closing comments. Happy to answer any additional questions, though.
Additional questions for staff? The applicant characterized it understandably like looking at our housing plan and looking at the comp plan as being a city push for increased density and housing types. What's your reaction to that assertion? I mean, it does fit, as we've all heard, it fits with those plans. How much of a push is it by the city to implement that in this way?
I would say that we have a pretty extensive framework of adopted policies that include the housing plan, that include the comprehensive plan, that include the South Boulder Road Small Area Plan, that will eventually include our new comprehensive plan, which you all are aware is currently still under works, combined with our mixed-use overlay, the revitalization area plan, and then also the mixed-use design standards that all call for density in this area. And then again, I think it's important to note too, obviously we appreciate all the neighbors' concerns, but we as a staff are administering policies that have been adopted by your predecessors and of course elected officials here in the city that call for those levels of densities in this location and that call for that level of connectivity as well. So I would say that what the applicant put forward there is accurate based on our adopted policies and plans.
And as it regards to the Front Street connection, really it does come down to those U-turns, the dangerous U-turns that would have to happen somewhere to allow people to go in the direction they want to go.
I would say that the traffic study indicates that without the Front Street connection, there is an undesirable condition that occurs on South Boulder Road. But I would also assert that, again, based on those policy documents, there's very strong policy support for a connection in this location. Some folks refer to it as a grid. That may not necessarily be accurate, but I will say that those policy documents continuously call for connection, whether that be to an existing neighborhood or existing trails or existing arterials. There is a continuous theme of connection in our mixed-use residential districts. That I think finds its way into most of our adopted policies and the mixed-use district guidelines. So I would say that would be from a planning perspective, that would be how we would administer this, our adopted policies and provisions when an application like this comes through in this location.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last time this came before us, one of the concerns expressed by another commissioner was emergency access and the benefit of having the Front Street connection for emergency access as much as anything else. I guess I'm a little less, and one suggestion from one of the residents this evening was to have the connection, but to have it restricted to literally emergency vehicle access only, not to general public access. So I'm less concerned from what I've seen and heard about the cut through. If again, not everybody has an opinion, so I'll be careful. But conceivably, if people are trying to avoid the South Boulder 42 challenge, they could cut through Main Street today. Creating a cut through at Front Street is just yet another cut through to achieve the same aim. And I'm not asking anybody to assess how much of a cut-through activity occurs on Main Street today down to the middle school. But I know the city has a strong recommendation here for the connection. What if it was emergency access only?
I would posit that would not be in line with adopted policies for full connection. I think there's just a recognition that a lot of folks are in their vehicles. If we were a more transit-oriented, denser community that was less reliant on vehicles, that may be a valid approach, I believe. I've worked on approaches like that in other jurisdictions here on the Front Range that are more urbanized, and I think that's been an appropriate solution. But I do believe that would not necessarily be in line with the intent of the connection policies. Obviously, it would provide that pedestrian and multimodal connection for bicycles, and which is fantastic. But again, we have to acknowledge that a large population of folks will be utilizing motor vehicles for that connectivity as well.
I just wanted to add a little bit to that, and I know we've talked about this again and again and again, but yes, having the safety access for fire, police, and all that is great. But I think what we're saying is that there are safety issues without the Front Street, and then there's practicality issues of people wanting and needing to go westbound on South Boulder Road. So I think it creates that need that this development would generate. And it's not all of the development, but there's a significant amount of the development that's going to want and need to go westbound on South Boulder Road. And if their only option is to go out and make U-turns for the reasons described, that's going to create a dangerous traffic situation. So, so those are the reasons, just to reiterate them one more time. It's not just because, the policies exist for a reason as well, trying to create that connectivity. I would reiterate, too, that a lot of these policies were created on this side of the railroad tracks in order to facilitate transit-oriented development in support of a future commuter rail station. And so the commuter rail station plans have ramped up, and we're working with the state and CDOT and RTD to have a rail station by 2029. There's a lot of momentum. There's funding identified. So this development is also in support of the rail station. So all of the policies that we've been talking about in the Highway 42 plan, the mixed-use overlay, they're all also important to develop a transit-oriented neighborhood in and around the rail station.
Right. I guess I'm at risk of getting into deliberation mode, but I guess I'm wrestling with policy versus reality of that particular area. That's the concern. So, but maybe that's for deliberation. I don't want to challenge Director Zaccaro on that.
You know, it's fine, and you know the Planning Commission can have a different recommendation, and certainly individually or as a group when you get to deliberation. Just to reiterate, and I think I've told all planning commissioners this before, it is okay not to agree with staff's recommendation at any time, and that's fine. We're not offended. We're just trying to implement the policies and all of these interests, and there's broad interests that we're trying to implement here, as well as trying to balance the issues of the neighbors. And so I think hopefully we've demonstrated that the applicant and staff have been trying to find solutions. Clearly, they're not the solutions that have garnered clear neighborhood support, but hopefully we're demonstrating that we are trying to work towards that as well.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for adding that. All right, any additional questions? Yes, Commissioner Hunt, please.
Don't forget me. I've been here so long. And I want to just apologize. I think you mentioned this earlier, but it's been a long night, and I just want to make sure I understand. I thought you mentioned there's in the works, in addition to the transit-oriented redevelopment happening along that area, is there also plans in the works to be fixing the Highway 42 South Boulder Road area, the road there? Is that part of the plan? Not part of this.
It's not part of this plan, but the city's been you know, and the city engineer folks can talk more about it, but we've adopted the Highway 42 vision plan. I forget the exact name. So and then we're going into design right now that would actually improve those intersections and improve capacity on Highway 42. Again, that could happen in 5 years, maybe 10 years, we don't know, but there is a significant amount of money and effort and planning with CDOT and others, City of Lafayette, to make those improvements on Highway 42.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, Director Zaccaro hit that on the head there. You know, we had the discussion previously, but funding is currently not available, but we're going through a process right now with Dr. Cog to kind of get in a master plan for funding for future dollars for that. Again, everything's kind of unknown here, but the thought with that is to improve intersections, improve multimodal connections for vehicles, pedestrians all along the 42 corridor, which includes this South Boulder Road and Highway 42 intersection.
And actually, from a state perspective, that's been simmering on the back burner for over 10 years, at least at this point. So, yeah, ongoing. Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing, and the planning commissioners will deliberate on the evidence presented. During deliberations, no further public comment or other testimony or evidence will be received. Who would like to begin?
I'll start if you want me to.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Get out of the way. I really appreciate the passion and the hard work that everybody's put into this, and including the neighbors and coming and giving their comments. I mean, obviously this is raising a lot of valid concerns, and I totally understand and appreciate, again, all the involvement. I think what I'm concerned about is, it sounds to me like this connection is necessary. The city has determined it is necessary. And that, as Commissioner Moline asked earlier and got an answer, that even under the current zoning, the entitlements here, that's going to be necessary. So if we reject this, what we're basically saying is that there's no way to develop this property. And I don't think that that is consistent with all the plans, the comprehensive plan, the housing plan, all of the plans that we have, that the city has for this area. And so, I am sensitive to these concerns. This is not the last time, I hope, we will see sort of the plans and how they develop. There will be more reviews to do, but I just don't see, given the way it complies with all of these plans and complies with the zoning and the intent of our planning documents, I just don't see a way to reject this at this point without basically telling the owner of this property you can't develop it.
Thank you. Yes.
Boy, I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Hunt, and again, I appreciate everybody being here and the work that's gone into this. And I think, at least for me, this is striking me as one of those situations where there's some serious trade-offs here, and I'm excited that a development that we're listening to a development that could kind of move the needle on some of our affordable housing goals. And I just feel like we're not going to get, that the city is not going to get everything that it wants out of this. And I am really stuck. This is a tough one. I appreciate very much the comments that we've heard tonight, and I'm feeling really that if we approve this development that allows for that connection in Front Street, I really feel like this development is going to have a really detrimental effect on the adjacent neighborhood, to the point where I'm struggling to consider approving it. And so I guess I'm wondering if there is a solution that would allow, in this particular instance, and again, having to set aside some of our policy, that would allow for some development but not allow for the traffic to go through front. I'll just say that I'm not compelled that, again, I appreciate the staff recommendations, the questions that we got, but I'm hopeful that we could find some other way to connect this development into the road system. And maybe part of this too is, we've got existing roads that are, and signals that are not meeting, they're failing already. And so I'm also compelled by, what's the responsibility of approving something that is going to contribute to some of those issues? Maybe there needs to be a wait till some of these things get, till some of the intersections are improved. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm leaning. I'm not really, I guess I'm deliberating, but also just sharing some of my thoughts with you at this point.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Additional thoughts, deliberations?
I appreciate Commissioner Moline breaking the ice on this hard topic. I am persuaded by the neighbors that this is an untenable situation to have the connection go through. So I think I understand that it is possible to do the development without the connection, and I would like to see that direction pursued for future plans.
Okay. Without over obsessing about the connection, I think, the rest of the resolution was also about the development itself. So in general, the waivers requested, the drainage concerns, the setbacks, the parking, the rezoning for use, I'm personally generally comfortable with all of those at this stage in the process. Obviously, there's more definition to be had. So, thanks to the applicant for all the work over the last year to come back at our request and conduct the traffic study and make some of the changes to the application. So I'm certainly comfortable with that. A lot of comments this evening as well about the viability of the development and the affordability and opinions about density. Personally, I'm comfortable with all of those. And to Commissioner Moline's comments and other comments, it meets what the challenges are for the city in terms of the comprehensive plan, the housing plan, trying to meet the affordability initiatives. I don't think it's our place to judge whether that there'll be too many renters who might be transient, for use of a better word that was used earlier. I think we welcome renters as much as investors, as much as owners. So I'm not concerned about that in terms of the mixed use. I think I'm leaning towards the connection. I understand policy, but I respect the concerns of the neighbors. I'm equally concerned, if not even more concerned, about the school and the impact of the school and the limitations we have in general in that area for traffic. So I am seriously conflicted in terms of what the best outcome is here. I almost want to find a middle ground compromise, which is have a connection, but for emergency access only. Dare I say, the elephant in the room would be there that at some point in the future, someone might determine that the emergency access only designation could be changed, and it could become a through street and a connected street. At this point, I'm struggling with having the connection as part of this particular request and recommendation.
I would say that I'm right there with you on all of those points. The accommodations that have been requested seem all doable for any number of reasons. I really do like the housing mix. It's unlike anything else we do have right now in Louisville. And yet it comes down to this location and the traffic impacts on the existing neighborhood. It will forever change that neighborhood if it goes through as currently proposed with the connection. And that's where I'm stuck. It's the same exact spot we're all stuck, I think.
So can we make a request to amend? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you could make so when you adopt your resolution, you could make, in your motion, you could recommend adding to the resolution, this is what I would suggest, that the Front Street connection be changed to emergency access only, so that would mean that we'd probably put bollards or work to put some barrier up. But there still be pedestrian and bike connections through there, and that it be designated for emergency access only. So I think that would be you could just state that you're recommending approval of that resolution with that change. We could work on very specific language if you want, or if you could probably come up with something. So that would be your recommendation to City Council. And then I think the options are, the application as is could go to City Council, or that could be amended before it goes to City Council, and City Council could be the final decision maker on that.
That feels pretty comfortable, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Commissioner Hunt, your reaction to that thought it would be a condition that we would add to it?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
All right, thank you. All right, any additional? I think
We have
that
to come up
covers
with
it
some
for me.
wording.
Oh, well, so it'll be a condition, and we'll let staff write the condition, but that connection be as discussed, where it provides ready pedestrian and bicycle pathway, but emergency access via, and like quite literally whatever means necessary at the expense of the developer to develop whatever these bollards are, or whether they're automatic ones you had spoke to previously, or whether there's some type of a, whatever the city would want. All right. So that would be our condition. We can just add that now. And so that would bring it up to 5 conditions for our roll call vote, please.
Do we need a motion?
A motion, yes. Let's start with that motion.
It is getting late.
I've been off the last few months. I've missed that little detail. Yes, a motion, please.
I would move, but I might need to read the resolution.
Yes.
Let's see. Boy, I don't know if this is going to have enough, but let's try it. I would move approval of Resolution 15, Series 2025, with a recommendation to City Council for rezoning, subdivision, and planned unit development request for the 10.7 acre vacant property located near the southwest corner of South Boulder Road and Highway 42. With the
5 conditions.
Yes, 4 conditions in the packet and the one that we just added just now. So 5 total.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you. And a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Chair Brown Eyes.
Oh, I usually get to go last. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I do
That's
that wrong?
fine. Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Basket. Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunt.
Yes.
And Commissioner Moline.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. Look forward to some sort of amenable resolution. We do have a few other details we have to take care of, so if you want to discuss, please do take it outside. Otherwise, you are always welcome to listen. I would now entertain a motion to move the discussion of the Louisville Center for the Arts sign to next November's meeting. Is that when we want it?
If we could continue it to a date certain, the November 13th.
November
public
13th,
hearing,
yes.
I'd recommend. Yeah, we may be proposing a special meeting with all the case log, but for now, November 13th is set, so that's a
Yeah.
good choice.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Motion?
So moved, if I
Second?
can.
Second.
Do we have a second? Yes?
Second.
Why don't we do a roll call just to make sure it's all clear, that everybody understands?
Should I
Yes,
put you
no,
last?
that's fine. Yes, I'm going to vote yes on that one.
Okay. Vice Chair Basket. Yes. Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunt.
Yes.
And Commissioner Moline.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. Do we have any additional planning commission comments? This is a tough one. Appreciate everybody's
Yeah, likewise.
consideration and thought
Yep.
into
Yeah.
it.
I'm sorry all that I wasn't there in person. I'm in the middle of like a 8-day trial and I just could not leave my house.
Understood.
Good luck with that. Yes.
Thank you.
And I think we all would say, and we already did, but thanks very much, staff, for working on this and yeah, this was a tough one.
Yeah. Thank you all. Funny how it works out sometimes. Staff comments.
No additional comments.
No, you got open mic.
There's a lot on the agenda coming up. So like I said, we may propose a special meeting. And then a reminder on October 28th, I think most of you committed to the joint discussion with City Council regarding development review process improvements. So a reminder on that.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, then. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.